Good evening and welcome to this regular meeting of the Northside Board of Trustees. Before calling this meeting to order, the board would like to take just a moment to briefly review some of the rules for conducting our meeting. The order of business for this meeting is set out in the agenda. One item that you may notice on the agenda is the consent agenda. This item includes items that are considered routine and are of a recurring nature. All of the items listed under the consent agenda item will be acted upon in one motion. If there is a consent agenda item which anyone here would like to address, please sign up to speak to that item and we will pull it from the consent motion and discuss it separately. The purpose of our meeting is to conduct board business, and for that reason it is held in public. It is not a public forum, however, we do provide the opportunity for audience participation. If there is anyone who would like to address the board during an agenda item or citizens to be heard portion of the agenda, we ask that you please complete a sign-up sheet located at the entrance to this room. This is so we do not overlook anyone who would like to speak to the board. We will review the rules for addressing the board later in the meeting. Is there anyone here who would like to sign up to an agenda item and has not done so? Okay, I don't see anyone heading to the back. This regular meeting of the Board of Trustees is authorized in accordance with Texas Government Code sections 551.001 through 551.146. It is officially now called to order. Please stand as Trustee Katie Reed leads us in the invocation and pledges of allegiance.
Almighty and merciful God, we ask your guidance and blessings upon this board, students, parents, patrons, teachers, and administrators, as we are assembled here this evening in the common pursuit of this great nation's wealth, our children. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you, Mrs. Reed. The next item of business on, hey, Monty, the next item on the business on the agenda is the superintendent's report. Dr. Woods.
Yes, ma'am. Turn my microphone on. Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Just a few items to bring to the attention of the board tonight. The first is that, and I know the members of the board are aware of this, but at the end of this next month, Johnny Vaselka, the longtime executive director at the Texas Association of School Administrators, will retire, and there will be some time in this next month dedicated to trying to fill those very, very big shoes in that organization, and I'll actually be participating in some of that during some weekends in February, and the goal of the group is to announce a new executive director by the end of February. And again, I'll just say that Johnny has left a tremendous legacy on school children and school employees in our state for 4 decades now. As a part of Board Appreciation Month, and there's a couple of people in the audience to help us with Board Appreciation Month tonight, but as a part of Board Appreciation Month, we held our annual former trustee and superintendent luncheon, and that is one of my absolute favorite events of the year, to get to visit with those folks. And when you listen to the stories and the decisions that they made early in the formation of our formative years of our school district, we really do stand on the shoulders of the leaders that came before us in Northside, and that is just so, we're reminded of that, I guess, every year at that event. I also want to thank the Jay High School administration and their culinary group, both the adults and the students, for honoring the board last week in a very nice event held at John Jay High School. And we'll say a couple of more things about board appreciation here in a minute. I want to point out that a number of us got to attend a ceremony for Redax students who are transitioning to adult independent living recently, a little different than what they've done in the past. And I want to thank the Redax staff for their work and La Cantera Resort for hosting that really, really neat ceremony where the kids got to talk about what they're doing for work, what they do for volunteerism, how they negotiate transportation in the community. It was a really inspiring event. I know that a lot of folks share that opinion. This past weekend, as per usual, lots of things going on. I got to go see some robotics competition and watch some of our elementaries and middle schools compete in robotics. It was great to see those kids participating in STEM activities on the weekend, but one of the things I love about robotics is the growth mindset that's built into it, you know, that I don't always get it right the first time and I have to figure out how to make it better the next time, go back to the drawing board, work with my colleagues and so forth. I really enjoy that aspect of it. So another event this past weekend is each year Academic Decathlon is hosted, and for some reason, and Ms. LaCour is actually in the audience tonight, it's perpetually at Warren. I don't know how y'all earned that right, but anyway, so Warren, as usual, hosted Academic Decathlon, and I had it in my notes, Valerie, to thank you and your staff. Marshall actually won the competition. Warren will also advance to the state competition, so congratulations to both of those folks. So we'll defer the video moment and show that during recognitions, and with that, I'll close my report. Ms. Chumley.
All right, thank you, Dr. Woods. Do any trustees have any board member reports? Ms. Reed?
Yeah, just a couple of things. I was actually at the, number of us were there at the graduation, or the adulthood, moving into adulthood is what I would call it, I guess, ceremony for the Redax kids. And they're not just kids, they're 21, 22 years old, and they have become members of, adult members in our society, and that's what we do with them, and I just think it was a fantastic ceremony. So that was one of the fun things I did, and a couple of others that I attended this year was the band concert that was from the middle school students. And I would say that those middle school students performed so fantastically. And these are select students that have competed to be on this, in the band from all of our middle schools. And they were actually, we have 20 middle schools, so they were actually two bands. One performed first and then the other one. And they only practiced with the conductor, visiting conductor, Friday and Saturday, and performed Saturday. And they were fantastic. So it was just really pleased that I was able to be there for that. And the other day I went to Boone Elementary School for their spelling bee, which was really cute. It's always fun to see what the elementary kids are doing. And they had a real spelling bee and were spelling their words. We didn't get to stay for the whole thing because we had another meeting to attend. But that was one of the other fun things that I was able to do. And tomorrow I'll be over at Oak Hills Elementary School for recognition. So it's a lot of events going along with the students in Northside that really make me feel good because that's what it's all about. We talk about it all the time. It is about the kids. And so we're happy to be doing that. There was one other thing that I did attend was the All-American Football Bowl, and then stayed for a little bit of the All San Antonio Bowl, I guess it was called. The only problem is they wait almost 2 hours between when one ends before the other one starts. And by that time, most of the people that were there for the big bowl are gone. So it's a shame that they haven't found a way to do it a little closer together so people would stay because they are great athletes, and these are the cream of the crop. And we had, I think, 20 representatives on that team. The whole West team from the city was pretty much Northside. So a lot of fun things happening, but it also makes for a very busy schedule. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Ms. Harrell, Dr. Harrell.
Thank you. I do have a few. What I love so much, and Katie, you mentioned it, is all the programs we have going on. And one of them is an elementary school program at several of our schools called Girls on the Run. And they have curriculum and activities. It's not just
girls running, and I was kind of a little confused about the name of the club, but it's girls that exercise and do a lot of confidence building and self-concept building exercises and just have a great time. They had a run on December 9th, and so I ran with them, and listening to the girls talk along the way was wonderful. I did a lot of listening, but actually, because I was trying to keep up with them, I got a medal in my age group. But I do owe it to them because they were inspiring me. So we are continuing that program through Learning Tree again in the spring semester. So I encourage you to find out more about it. But it's wonderful, and the girls are terrific. I do want to do a special shout out to Emilia Huerta, who is the counselor at Glen Oak. She and her crew partner with CIS and Communities in Schools and several of the teachers and coaches there to provide an outstanding program. And I'm sure the other schools that do the same are similar. We also had Day of Code throughout our district, and just about everyone participated in it. So I got in the mix and went to Leon Valley, and Andrea Cantu, who is the technology teacher, oh my gosh, she those kids were coding all kinds of stuff, but to teach an old dog how to code, I went home that evening and did coding at code.org with my grandson, and so we are just taking off coding all kinds of things, but that was lots of fun. So I encourage you to participate in anything that has to do with coding, because it is like another language, and it is a really good way to problem solve and to plan. I do want to thank so much Northside's participation in an event that was hosted by the State Board of Education Long Range Planning Steering Committee, of which I'm a part. There's two of us in Region 20. Sherry Doss, who is the Texas PTA, happens to live here in San Antonio in Northeast School District, and then myself, and we're part of an 18-member steering committee that is wanting input from everybody in this room, everybody in Bexar County, everybody in Texas, on where public ed should go until the year 2030. And so you can actually go to the TEA website, and there will be a survey that you can participate in. But we had an event where almost 200 educators, parents, stakeholders, and students attended, and Northside was the only one who had students. And so special thanks to Warren High School. Thank you so much for bringing your kids, and that was delightful. And Clark, Marshall, and Health Careers. The kids talked with such confidence and such wisdom that it was hard for me not to get emotional, because they had great things to say. But we also had staff who went, our superintendent went, and several of our board members, and we were just so well represented. And so thank you so much in Northside. For the group that's here, they were asked to give their input on student engagement empowerment, which is one of our areas of focus for the state, educator preparation, recruitment, retention, equity and access, and family engagement and empowerment, along with any other input. So I encourage everyone to get the word out about that, so that the state board can work with the legislators to ensure that we have the best public ed programs in the state of Texas. Last, I want to mention, we already mentioned Redax, and that was such a moving ceremony and celebration of going into adulthood. And it reminded me, and I wanted to thank my fellow board members, the power of service and volunteerism. Those students expressed how happy they were to volunteer, and that they wanted jobs, and they wanted more to volunteer, more things to volunteer, and they all wanted that. They wanted that. They said it with a smile. So that's every time I'm with our group up here, when we talk about Northside, it's with a smile, and it's with gratitude and appreciation. And so I know we're being celebrated tonight for our work, but it's truly a gift of love when you get to represent and support Northside. And then the last, I promise this is the last thing. I did get to go see Once Upon a Mattress at Stevens High School, and it was, that again was a celebration of fine arts. All the arts were represented, and the lead singer, her name was Fred, not her real name, but her character name was Fred, just was fantastic. She was just so neat. But she came afterwards and she said, "Thank you for sitting there and smiling at me the whole time." And you never know that you're sitting there. She really was terrific, but that she was watching me watch her. And actually all the students too. But it was wonderful. So I encourage you, we have so much going on with academics and athletics and fine arts. Take advantage of it, and you'll never be at home. You'll be busy doing Northside things. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Freeman?
Yes, thank you, Ms. Chumley. Well, I started scribbling down some notes, and I think a lot of these have been talked about, but to add a few things, Carol, thanks for volunteering to be on that steering committee, and congratulations on being accepted. We appreciate you representing us there, and you did a great job at that meeting. And Carol mentions about how well Northside was represented and our students. I think over 50% of the people in that room were from Northside. And so very proud to be there and to be able to see all of us in numbers. And our students were so articulate in talking about what their vision is and what they see that's important in public ed. It was very enlightening to be able to listen to our students. They contributed a lot, and what I've heard too, and the students, I talked to a couple of them afterwards, they have really appreciated the opportunity to be there. And Dr. Woods, one of their highlights was actually meeting the superintendent, so that's really interesting. Also, a lot of discussion here about fine arts. We had 27 Northside students that made Texas All-State musician, and that was in 4 divisions. It was in, band, choir, jazz, and orchestra. That's the largest number that we've had in Northside in a decade. And just to put that into perspective, over 5,000 students across the state try out for those positions. And of those 500, there are only 450 chairs. And we had 27 of them, and 6 of those 27 actually made first chair in that particular group. So they did very well. So very proud of them. Regarding the Redax Center, I heard several comments from the families that were there. And in addition to everything that's been said, the families so appreciated that opportunity, and they were so proud of their children, and the students were absolutely wonderful. And Miss McGee, to add to the dinner that we had at Jay High School, the kids were fantastic. I know sometimes in years you've passed recipes around. I have a request. So especially the Italian cream cake that we had. It was all wonderful, but that was very special. So, and to add to what Carol said, it is truly a privilege to be able to be a board member in this school district. At this time, we talk about school board recognition. So many people come up to us and say thank you, but it is truly an honor to be able to represent this district and the staff and the students that we have here. Thank you, Ms. Chumley.
You're welcome. Thank you. Mr. Blunt?
Yeah, I just have one item. Just about completed the visits that our board had talked about during the summer out to our PTA meetings to do our basically advocacy and really a Go Northside message. I've got one more to go. I've gone to 17 in the last 2 months. And the interesting thing about the PTA meetings, it's not a meeting anymore, it's an event. When I went out to Baylau just to see what Mr. Leha was doing with his science night and all the different activities, I stayed. So one of the things I learned out of this is, initially I was just going out doing quick messages and sort of, okay, thank you, and was leaving. But from now on, what I learned toward the middle of it is you got to stay, because it is so great to see all the different activities and events. So if I get a chance to do it again, that's going to be my plan. I'm going to spread them out a little bit more so I can stay the full night, but it's been really enjoyable. That's all I had.
All right. Mr. Lopez?
Thank you, Madam President. Yeah, I really wanted to just hit on a couple of little topics that everybody has talked about. But in particular, I just want to say that, the school board dinner was, it was really a pleasure to be there. We were entertained by the orchestra. The culinary club prepared the dinner for us, and it was excellent. And to your point, Karen, the dessert was my favorite. I like the cheesecake. That's my favorite. So, but it was really well put together. The administration did a great job. One of the things that I did want to touch on, particularly about the trustee night, it was just really evident that the pride that they had there at John Jay, coming from the administration and then coming from the teachers, some of the teachers there, they really have a strong tradition. I mean, there are some teachers that their parents were teachers there, and they followed in their footsteps. So, I mean, and I wanted to say that that's evident not only just at John Jay, but that's also evident in some of our other high schools, and even evident in some of our teachers graduating from our schools and coming back and teaching in Northside. That says a lot. And even though we were being honored, I mean, it was an honor to serve. It's an honor for all of us here to serve, knowing that we have people coming back, graduates coming back, and giving back and serving our kids, today. So it was an honor for us to be a part of that dinner, and I really appreciate it. But it's really the service. I mean, the appreciation goes out to all our teachers at Northside, our administration, and our superintendent, and everybody else that's involved in this. So I won't say any more, and we'll end it here. Thank you.
All right. Mr. Medina.
Just, thank you, ma'am. I'll be real quick because I know it's been a long session. So there's two things. One, the returning from our winter Christmas break, I participated in Watchdogs, which is fathers of grade students attending, and I was able to not only visit classrooms, but multiple campuses, and observed not only teachers refreshed, but excited to be back, students excited, but also the activities that the teachers planned were really fun-filled activities that students were, having fun, but also learning. So it was really an exciting time to see everyone back for the new year. As well, I wanted to, due to the winter, I guess last week's freeze, and we postponed the magnet fair, true recognition to all the parents, the staff, administration, students, going out there and promoting their programs, just like our CCA Construction Career Academy that's present here today, but all the other and I wanted it to, it was a tremendous success. It was from start to finish. I saw huge crowds of students not only interacting, but also, their minds were in inquiry. They were learning and learning to investigate and choose a career. Also, Ms. Chumley's husband was there promoting FFA for O'Connor and so forth. Also, just one quick note, again, terrific job for the board dinner, John Jay Hospitality, Mr. Sumter and his administration team. The students did a fantastic job. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I just have a couple of things. I need to correct, remember I had told you all about the roads transportation that had collected all the backpacks for, well, there was actually another school. One of our students from O'Connor, who is now a teacher at Rayburn, Brittany Stone McInnes, actually had talked to her kids, and her kids actually brought and shared their own supplies for the kids as well. And so I just wanted to recognize her, because I thought that was really neat that she had kids sharing the supplies they had at school for the other kids. I thought that was neat. And I had a lot of fun. I got to go to Bronze Station, and it was a tri-STEM-a-thon, and it was all of these fun activities in relation to STEM. And so I want to thank Mr. Jack Funkhauser. The coordinator is Alicia Thomas, and the PTA president, Laura Bruja. So they had this great event. It was bungee babies. And so it was, how many rubber bands does it take to be able to get the baby to just stop like an inch before? And so the kids would climb up on this 8-foot ladder and then drop it. And those babies were wiped out. But it was so much fun. And then Mr. Funkhauser and I, they had another where they had cups that had a hole in the bottom, and they were on a string, attached on a bar, and they would put down a piece of the paper the board that, I can't remember the names, construction material, anyway, and so then you would pour paint in it, and then you push the cup to try to figure out how to do a pattern on the paper. We had the best time. It was just he and I. It was like being kids again. And I thought, we miss a lot now. They do a lot of neat things in elementary school that they never did. But anyway, I want to thank all of them because it was really a great event, and just very, very appreciative of their time and asking them to include me. That was really fun. Linda McGee, we always talk about the board lunch. Well, thank you very much for planning and organizing the board lunch for us every year. It was really a great event, and it was just wonderful. And the one thing that I've got out of it more than anything is that Northside has such a history of having individuals in governance that care about kids. And so I just want to thank my fellow trustees, because it truly is an honor to serve with all of you and to serve with Dr. Woods. The one things people always tell us, well, y'all aren't in the paper. Well, it's not because we don't disagree on things, because this board really does talk, and we all have come from different areas in our society, and we do talk about the issues, but the thing that makes the difference, I think, with us is that we all can still get along if we agree to disagree. And whenever a vote is taken, this board stands behind whatever that motion was and that decision was. So I just want to tell all of y'all, it's really a privilege to serve with you, and I appreciate that very much. And thank you for always doing that for us. And just one last thing, on the state board, I had the great privilege of sitting with Terry Zablocki, who's the principal, who is the librarian at Warren High School. Any of y'all know Terry, and her group of students. And it was just an unbelievable conversation. I just thought those kids really talked about, so people that say that kids are not engaged in our society anymore, they're just talking to the wrong kids. Because our students were engaged, and it was really wonderful. And then one last thing, the board dinner, I truly appreciated it. And Karen and I agree on getting some of those recipes. I love all of our culinary arts programs, but I'm a real down-home type of eater. Y'all can tell that. And so sometimes we'll go, and it's very foo-foo food, like I don't like eating leaves. And this was just down-home, cook-at-home kind of dinner, and it was wonderful. And so hats off to Linda Dalton and Ms. Esquivel and the Culinary Arts Club and program at John Jay, because it was a great dinner. Very, very appreciative, too, and it was good. So I want some of those recipes as well. Okay. The next item of business, wait, before we go on, do we have any students here, college students here in the, yes, and from where? UTSA. From UTSA? Okay, anyone else? Yes, ma'am. UTSA as well. Well, good. Well, we're glad to have you here, and you picked a very happy meeting for you to come to. Thank you. The next item of business on the agenda is the recognitions. Dr. Woods.
Yes, ma'am. So as we've discussed, January is designated as Board Appreciation Month, and it's an ideal time for us to focus on the crucial role that each of you, all 7 of you, play in our schools and in our community. And we've heard for the last few minutes what that role looks like in just one short month here in Northside America. Even though we're making a special effort in January to show our appreciation to you, we realize that your contributions reflect a year-round commitment. This year's theme chosen by the Texas Association of School Boards is helping kids soar to success, and there's no doubt that our 7 elected officials that govern this organization certainly do that. Tonight we have several people and organizations that would like to recognize and thank you for helping our students soar to success. We'll get started with PTA Council President Larry Rowe. Ask him to come forward. Larry?
Let me get my glasses on or I'll never be able to read that. I want to first say thank you for allowing us to come tonight. When I was getting ready to come, I asked how long was I allowed to talk, and they said 1 or 2 minutes. And anybody who knows me knows I can never do that. But I will try to stick to it. Thank you, Dr. Woods. I appreciate it very much. Mrs. Chumley, Board of Trustees. Thank you for everything you do, and good evening. My name is Larry Rowe. I am the current president for the Northside Council of PTAs. And tonight, I'm very proud to be here with a portion of my board members over here and some others across the room over there to acknowledge everything you do to help our students here in Northside. You set a high standard for excellence and accomplishment for everyone, and that lends to the many successes of our schools and our students on a daily basis. You truly help our students soar to success. But if you don't mind obliging me for just a moment, I'd like to provide you with a quick update on the state of PTA, though we've already heard from a few of you tonight. Yes, we do make our meetings events now. All 110 of our PTAs are active. The highest level of achievement that a local PTA can do at the state level, though, is what is called good standing. At this time, we have 80 of our 110 that have already accomplished that. The other 30 are actively pursuing it, and I know they will accomplish that in the very short near future. Our membership numbers right now are at 98% of what they were last year. We're about 400 short of surpassing that goal, and we get new members every single day. In the last month, we've had an additional 100. So I know we will be passing that very soon. We have 55 of our PTAs that have increased their membership over last year. 51 of those have increased it by 5% or more. And one thing that it really stood out to me is out of that 51, 21 of them were Title I campuses. And it's very difficult for some of the times for them to be able to get parents and other people to support. We have 5 campuses that have been honored with the School of Excellence Award from National PTA. There were only 19 in the state of Texas, and only 5 in Bexar County. They were all from Northside. What can I say? And at the present time, we just finished our reflections competition where we have the students compete in 16 different fine arts areas. We had 342 entries from 57 different campuses in the district. Yesterday, my wife and I drove 19 up to Austin so that they can compete at the state level. And I feel confident some of those are going to go on to the national competition as well. At the present time, our units are working diligently to get out the word into the people in their community to register to vote for upcoming elections this year.
Great.
And we have Founders Day next week, and I can't wait to see all of you again. But enough about us. Tonight, it's about you and what you do for the Northside ISD, our community, our PTAs, and most of all, our students. We thank you for your hard work, because without your continued support, PTA could not do anything to help our students make their goals a reality. You provide us that framework so that we can help every child soar to success. So tonight, I'm going to ask our board members to come up, and we have a small token bag that we'd like to personally give each of you to thank you for what you do to us. Also, we have a check, Mrs. Chumley, that we're going to give to you. That a donation has been made in the Jack C. Jordan, well, in honor of you, to the Jack C. Jordan Scholarship Foundation. This scholarship meant a whole lot to Mr. Jordan, as I know it probably does to many of you as well. After all, it helps some student continue in their goal of education and soar on to greater successes. So, thanks again. And I hope to see all of you in 9 days. And by the way, I've already tasted the food for Founders Day. I don't remember any leaves.
Great.
So we'll be glad. So have a wonderful evening. At this time, I'm going to turn the podium over to Dwayne Hedrick, who is the president of Northside Museum Association. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Dr. Woods, President Chumley, members of the board. I am here with some other members of the Northside School Museum Association to thank you for your service to the school district and its students, as well as your interest and support of the Northside School Museum. This evening, the school museum has 2 gifts of appreciation we would like to present to each of you. As in past years, we would like you to have the school museum Fiesta Medal.
Wonderful.
Unfortunately, the medal is still in production.
That's okay.
In its place, we have an IOU with a picture of the medal.
Wonderful.
This year's unique 2018 School Museum Fiesta Medal was designed by Rand Alzaberry
I love these. I wear them. I have all of
at
them.
Holmes High School.
All right.
And Rand is here this evening with her mother, grandfather, and her brother.
Oh, very nice.
As well as their visual arts instructor, teacher, Erica Tott, and Dr. Adrian Flores, assistant principal. Secondly, we have a special gift for each of you created by Warren High School students. As you may know, both the School Museum Association and the NISD Fine Arts Department are designated as community partners for the SA 300 Tricentennial Celebration. This fall, museum members along with Jim Macholka and members of the NISD Fine Arts Department and Eric Franke, the Fine Arts Coordinator at Warren High School, have been collaborating on ways to showcase the history of the rural schools which existed in Northwest Bexar County as early as the 1860s. Fine arts students across the district, from high school to elementary level, have been learning about their educational heritage and creating visual and performing arts to demonstrate their understanding of early education prior to the formation of NISD. Some of the exhibits featuring the students' works can be seen at Los Leones on March 3rd, Student Fine Arts Fest on April 20th and 21st, and at the NISD Central Office and the Northside School Museum from March 1st to May 30th of this year. This evening, the School Museum Association would like to present each of you with a vintage pencil box, an example of students' outstanding creations. The vintage style pencil box, an example of students' outstanding historical creations. The pencil boxes were created by students in the CTE program, not the CCA program, as I've been
Yes.
informed by on many occasions, by the CTE program at Warren High School under the leadership of their construction and technology electives instructor, Brian Chase Hacker. Okay, students presenting the pencil boxes are Eric Maras to Ms. Chumley, Jocelyn Ortiz
Eric, thank
to
you
Mr.
very
Lopez,
much.
and Jocelyn is here with her
Thank
mother.
you so much. This is wonderful.
Rudy Castillo
Oh,
will
my
present to Dr.
goodness.
Woods, and Rudy's father and brother are here.
This is beautiful. Thank you very
Drew
much.
Taylor present to Miss Freeman, and Drew's father is here somewhere. There he is. Isaiah Taylor will present to Mr. Blount, and Isaiah is here with his father. Mer-
This is great.
Huh? Oh, sorry,
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you.
Isaiah Valdez.
I love this.
And Maria Reyna
Oh, my gosh.
present to Dr. Harl. And Chase will present to Mr. Medina and Miss Reed.
These are great. These are really neat. They are beautiful. They do. You take
And they
it off
come
and then-
equipped with a writing tool. We'd also like to thank Valerie Sisk, Warren High School principal.
Yes.
For
Thank
attending.
you.
Thank you again for your service and support, and may your days continue to be Northside inspired. I would like to now turn the podium over to NEF Secretary Monty Howard.
Well, good evening, President Chumley, trustees, Dr. Woods, and district staff. My name is Monty Howard. I'm Secretary of the Board for Northside Education Foundation. And this year, NEF's theme is There's No Place Like NEF. It can confidently be said because there's no place like Northside, especially when it comes to the leadership and support that NEF receives from you all. None of our success would be possible without your steadfast support and confidence in our mission. We know what you do, both for the district and the foundation, and in addition to many of your other commitments, can be tiring work. We hope that these goodies that we brought for you tonight will energize your Oz-like courage and hearts and brains so that you may continue to be the best board in San Antonio, Bexar County, and anywhere else for that matter. Please accept these gifts as a token of our appreciation for you all. And assisting me in this task is Cassandra Miranda, our most capable and excellent executive director. Thank you very much.
This is very nice. I love it.
It's like Christmas in January.
It is. Oh my gosh. Thank you. Very
So
much.
while Cassandra and Monty finish passing out gifts, I'll say a few other things. So obviously in Northside, we are so fortunate to have the quality of the individuals we have serve as members of our board. Not every school district has the kind of cohesive professional board that we are so fortunate to work with here in our school district. Your selflessness and the number of hours that you commit to meetings and all of the events that we've heard about tonight, and just like that every month, is unqualified anywhere that I know. I want the audience to realize that you don't just come to board meetings. There are lots of other events that we spoke to tonight, and you can see some examples of those events on our Board in Action page on our website. Our board provides vision and leadership to our district in their roles as advocates, and they continue to stand up for public education generally and guard against anything that would take away resources from our students. As you well know, our district's theme this year is Northside Inspired. Our school board embodies this theme on a daily basis as they remain strong in their support of public education and continue to be inspiring advocates for the power of public education. It is for that reason and much more that we wanted to present you with yet another gift that reflects our theme and will remind you on a daily basis to remain inspired in your support of our students and staff, inspired in your support of our school district, and inspired in your support of public education in the great state of Texas. There we are.
Oh.
So Monica and I debate every year what my board gift is going to be. So it occurs to me this year that we got you a bag that you can take all your other gifts home in, you know? It's efficient.
Oh, this is a great duffel.
Great leadership always begins with a willing heart, a positive attitude, and a desire to make a difference. At this time, we'd like to show you our special video. This is the reason we didn't do video moment in the superintendent's report, made especially for you.
I'm pretty sure there aren't many kids who say,
I want to be a school trustee when I grow up.
and it's probably because most people really don't understand all that our 7 Northside trustees do to support us.
But we want you to know that your hard work doesn't go unnoticed.
By students, teachers,
Administrators
And parents.
Thank you for attending events at our school like concerts and athletic games.
and for visiting our classrooms and taking an interest in what we are learning.
And even when you can't actually be there, thanks for tweeting your support too.
Thank you for being active members of our community,
For joining PTA and Watchdogs.
and showing us how valued parents and families are in Northside.
Thank you for understanding the challenges we have every day in leading our schools.
And in supporting our students beyond their academic needs.
Thank you for making decisions that always put kids first.
Thank you for encouraging us to take risks
And to do whatever it takes to inspire every student every day.
Thank you for being an advocate for public education and encouraging us to go public.
We truly appreciate your hard work.
You are our ultimate volunteers.
Thanks, Doug.
We are inspired by your leadership and commitment to Northside Independent School District.
Thought you might recognize that kid, yeah. So one last time, if the members of the audience will please join me in applauding these leaders who care so deeply about Northside students, teachers, and patrons. Thank you all for what you do. At this time, we're going to conclude our recognitions, but we'd like to offer folks to adjourn for about 10 minutes for a special reception to honor the members of our board. I want to point out that tonight's reception is actually provided to you by students in the culinary program at Marshall High School, and their instructor is Chef B.J. Salter. However, for trustees at least, if you'll come down and let us take a picture first. Let everybody else get to the cookies first. Thanks very much.
And everybody's left, but Cassandra, thank you so much. This was just very nice. You know, and the nice thing about this too is that we are also honored, and it is such a privilege for us to be able to serve the students of Northside, and then to have this, it's really nice. Thank you. And the food was great. So the next item of business on the agenda is the Northside Education Foundation Annual Report.
Good evening, President Chumley, trustees, Dr. Woods, and staff. Monty Howard again, Secretary of the Board of Directors for Northside Education Foundation. The 2016-2017 fiscal year was a good one for the foundation, but we realize our work is cut out for us. The NEF Board is making some exciting changes this current fiscal year, which we hope will improve our fundraising efforts. We are very proud of these highlights, and especially having received a few prestigious awards this year, and that we awarded over $400,000 in grants to Northside staff. We also deployed our first ever annual giving campaign called the NEF Nation, which targets Northside alumni. And we hope to report the positive results of this program this time next year. Our fundraising events did well, raising $552,000, which was used to award grants and to fund our endowment. The foundation continued to maintain the amount awarded as part of the successful grants program and continues to fund various programs, including scholarships. The endowment grew and is now at a healthy $4.7 million.
Wow.
One of the foundation's functions is to act as a conduit for donations and from a variety of sources such as individuals, businesses, and other foundations. This allows them to benefit from our nonprofit status and to designate funds to specific programs and campuses. Here's a list of our designated funds. There are several. And we certainly do appreciate the participation of the donors. We do greatly appreciate what they do for us as well as you, the board. This concludes our report for this year. And if I may piggyback on some of the previous comments tonight, it has been a privilege for me as a professional to work for a board like this. I work for several boards in several different school districts, and y'all are by far the best I have ever encountered. And thank you very much for that privilege.
Thank you. Thank you, Monty. Thank you very much. Thank you. The next item of business on the agenda is the consent agenda. Do any trustees have any items that they want to pull from the consent agenda or discuss? Seeing none, can I have a motion come from the board?
I move approval of the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the consent agenda. Seeing no discussion, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, the ayes have it and the motion carries. The next item of business on the agenda is citizens to be heard. Okay. And then here's the... Okay, so in rules for addressing the board, We believe citizens to be heard is important and meaningful, and we will listen to what you have to say. We value your opinions, although we are restrained by law from taking any action. Please use the podium. Address your remarks to the board. Confine your remarks to a Northside policy or practice. Limit your remarks to 3 minutes. At 2 minutes, the board secretary, Mr. Lopez, will hold up the yellow card. At 3 minutes, the board secretary will hold up the red card. We ask that you wrap up your remarks at that point. Do not make personal attacks on individuals. And the audience, please refrain from applause or any negative response. Thank you. Mr. Lopez, the first person.
Teresa Galvez.
Good evening. My name is Teresa Galvez. Tonight you will hear Board Policy EHBAF Local for the first time. I'd like to thank members of your senior staff for taking the time to meet with me to get a parent's perspective for this policy. I hope it was helpful. I was one of hundreds of parents from across the state who fought for Senate Bill 507 after my son was seriously injured in his special education classroom by his special education teacher nearly 6 years ago, right here in Northside ISD. The teacher responsible was never charged and retained his teaching certification even after a CPS investigation found there was reason to believe the injury was the result of child abuse. We need cameras in special education classrooms to help keep the most vulnerable students safe. But these cameras aren't just about safety. They're also about accountability. Too many kids were coming home from school with unexplained injuries, and too often there was no accountability because the students were unable to explain how they were injured, or school leadership and other authorities did not think the student was reliable because of their disability. Video can be their voice. As you listen to this policy tonight, imagine you are a parent of a child in one of these classrooms. Imagine your child comes home with fingerprint bruises on their arm, or a handprint bruise on their back, or maybe broken fingers, a broken leg, or a broken arm. You're told your child fell or did it to himself. Imagine your child tells you he was locked in a closet or filing cabinet for not following the rules. Imagine your child says she was dragged down the hallway, sprayed with a water bottle, or dragged across the classroom by her hair. All of these are examples of incidents and unexplained injuries that school leadership from across the state refused to acknowledge for what it was: child abuse. Because the incident wasn't caught on camera and they refused to believe a trusted educator, teacher, or staff member could be responsible. So, as you hear this policy, ask yourself if you would be satisfied with this policy if this was your child. School board superintendents and educator organizations objected to this bill, calling it an unfunded mandate. Tonight, you will also discuss the proposed bond for 2018. There is $6 million allocated for security cameras in the proposed bond, but none of that is for cameras in special education classrooms. I challenge you to address the safety issues for all students by ensuring there is money in the proposed bond to put cameras in every eligible classroom, and make the request to fully implement Senate Bill 507. You say you put these kids first. Well, these are the kids you need to put first. I'd also like to point out that out of the 20 school districts in San Antonio area, only Northside and one other district has failed to adopt this required policy until now. Senate Bill 507 was passed in June of 2015 and was effective at the beginning of the 2016-17 school year. Northside ISD prides itself on being a leader in the Texas public schools. So as trustees, I'd hope you'd want to know why it took 17 months for Northside ISD to fully comply with the Texas Education Code and adopt this local policy. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lopez?
Charles Medellin.
Good evening, board members and Dr. Woods. My name is Charles Medellin. I have a 4th and 5th grade student, Los Reyes. They were previously at Timberwild Elementary. I'm here to speak about it's been going on for about 2 years with no corrective action. I won't speak much about my children and ask Timberwild and Los Reyes the impact their test scores too on their stars speaks for them versus a child who is a special needs student. Bullying my child is the weight of my daughter. He's a special needs student that's been protected by that special. He's violated several Category 3 and 4 violations. Nothing's been done. He's been transferred to as a result of that. He's assaulted 2 teachers, one that I was witness to as a watchdog, and he's now in his 3rd classroom change, and we're not even done with this school year. I went through the chain of command. Teachers there, administrators, then I went to the assistant superintendent here. She delegated the corrective action to the principal. Principal delegated the corrective action to the vice principal, who was once previously a principal, and all the corrective action would have done was isolate my daughter. Went to the deputy superintendent, said that it was an assault. It was an assault witnessed by the teacher who worked it up. Nothing was done. I asked the deputy superintendent to use the reasonable belief law and to use the art committee to remove the child. That would supersede that special needs based on his conduct. None of that happened. Spoke to Dr. Woods, and now I'm here. I guess my question is, do these administrators know the vast resources they have available at their disposal so as to not displace my children, which is now a 20 and 40 mile round trip from my ex-wife and I. Kids are at a great school now. You can tell the difference night and day. I wanted the principal to be proactive versus reactive, and unfortunately we're here now. And I just implore the board members to inquire certain things that are going on at that school. I feel as though no teacher, staff, or student is safe there so long as that administrator is the leader there at that campus. I know bullying is an ongoing issue. I was bullied too. I'm a prior Northside product. I just don't want this to be an ongoing issue at that campus. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Can you just clarify? So your children were at Timberwild and now they're at Los Reyes?
Yes, it was an administrative transfer. They asked us what school we wanted.
Okay, so the school in question, though, that you're asking about or have concerns about is Timberwild?
Yes. If I can speak real quickly, the last slap in the face was my 4th grade student was assaulted with a lunchbox, and we didn't find out till 2 hours later by the nurse, not the administrator. When we inquired, the administrator said, "Oh, he was only hit with the soft lunchbox." It's not satisfactory for us, and that's what kind of set us off. We contacted Dr. Woods after that. I don't think it would be satisfactory for you as well. And it just it shouldn't be happening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Lopez?
Mr. Keeley? Keeley? Or Keel?
Q. Lee?
Keeley?
Hi, thank you again. A second time come to here to talk about the LEDs. I know you're most intelligent people in San Antonio education system for Los Independent School District. I would mention LED can upgrade the lighting system in Los Independent School District. You will have a lot of benefits, as you have school will have very good lights, very good for vision, for student to study, also can save a lot of energy. If you invest this money, you can get all benefits return about 2 years, and because LED you can use for 20 years, then you can continue save a lot of electric bill. Our company is a legal company, a small business company registered at Los Independent School District and registered at City of San Antonio. We wish we have equal opportunity to do business with Los Independent School District. However, we submitted a proposal 2 years ago and continue suggest Los Independent School to upgrade the lighting system, use LED as core technology. But we have not really had some right information. Then we heard in last year, 2017 summer, Los Independent supported some company to build lighting system use LED in 25 schools in those independent school district. We need managers and talk about again, some companies still got the right information to install lighting system. We have not get the right information. So at this time, we say we wish the those independent school district can support our technology. We really have good technology, can do beautiful business and build, upgrade beautiful lighting system for those independent school district. So would you please give us equal opportunity and would you please recognize our technology and the importance of LED technology because it is supported by government. Government has already spent millions of dollars and will receive million dollars benefits. Government cannot lose this kind of business, cannot lose a lot of investment. All right, thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Mr. San Miguel, has anyone spoken to Mr. Lee and explained what our bid process and all the rest is?
Yes, I would like to talk to.
Okay, could we try that again?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Lopez. Mr. Woods?
Sorry, I have to bother you. Give you some explanation.
In fact, if you'll just give those to me, I'll make sure that everyone has one. If you'll just leave them all with me. Thank you very much. All right, next item of business on the agenda, Mr. San Miguel, the schematic design, window upgrades, and ADA work, Helotes and Powell Elementary Schools.
Thank you, Ms. Chambly. We've got a couple items for you today. We have schematic designs for window upgrades and ADA for Helotes and Powell Elementary Schools. We presented this information to the building committee. Now we have Mr. Sean Carlson of SKA Architects to come and give us a brief presentation on what the schematics are looking like, so to speak.
Good evening, President Chumley, Dr. Woods, members of the board. On behalf of everybody at SKA, I'd like to thank you guys as well for all the opportunities you have given us.
Thank you.
As Mr. San Miguel said, I'm here to present window replacement and ADA upgrades at both Helotes and Powell Elementary Schools. I'll start with Helotes. Next slide, please. We did an assessment on the buildings, and as the buildings that are shaded in red are obviously the older buildings. They also have windows that are in very poor and failing condition. So our recommendation is to address those buildings first. The orange is the restrooms and auxiliary spaces that we need to bring into ADA compliance. And the areas in blue are some exterior routes that need to be addressed in order to provide accessibility from the bus loop and parent and student drop-off. Next slide, please. The areas highlighted in yellow are the windows that we're going to replace, and our recommendation is to take the frames and glazing out and replace them one for one. So the school is going to look like it did before, but we're going to have more efficient windows, and we're going to do that in areas, building B, C, D, and then the green areas are the restrooms and some other workspaces that we're going to bring into compliance. Next slide, please. The restrooms, there's only 2 staff restrooms on this campus, and they were both out of compliance for accessibility. And we are going to upgrade those, and in doing so, we actually had to get into a classroom at which we relocated a reading room and a speech room, which will be on another slide. But currently, the teacher's lounge and workroom are not to district standards. And in doing this, we can actually get a lounge and a workroom greater than the standards, and then we'll also have 2 compliant restrooms for staff members. In Building A, there's a clinic with a restroom that is non-compliant, and we're recommending that we address that. And then again, in the kinder area, we're doing the restrooms that are non-compliant and replacing the windows 1 for 1 highlighted in yellow. Next slide, please. Building C, we're recommending that we do bring into compliance the gang restrooms for both the boys and the girls' room, and then highlighted the windows that we're going to replace 1 for 1 or in kind. Next slide, please. Building D, this is the speech room that got relocated. I showed you the reading. And then we're going to take there are existing restrooms there that we're going to reconfigure, make compliant, and we're also getting to add a staff restroom in this area so that the teachers don't have to go all the way across campus to use the facilities. Next slide, please. And this is just kind of the way it looks now. It's going to look the same, except it's going to have new, more efficient windows. So that was Helotes. I'm going to move into Powell, which is very similar in scope. Do you have any questions on Helotes?
Could you just, well, let me ask, Mrs. Reed, Building Committee Chair, is there anything that you would like to share on this?
Well, I think we talked about it considerably, and especially about the size, type of windows that we would replace it with. And since we're going to do the same thing pretty much at both campuses, I would recommend we go ahead and hear the next presentation as well. That's all right with everybody?
Okay, Mrs. Freeman?
I just had some specific questions on the windows. In other schools where we've had windows that have been, for lack of a better term, window, nothing in between, we've
Can you go back one slide?
we've added some brick in between, or we're just replacing the windows and then doing perhaps something else at a
Yeah.
later time. Those are all going to stay.
It's going to look just like this, yes, ma'am, and we are just going to replace the windows as is. So if we take out a
The
ribbon
frames
window,
and, the frames and the windows.
The frame and the
But they will
glazing.
stay the same as they are. They will look the very same. They just have better windows and frames that are healthy.
And Karen, one of the things too, let me share, one of the things that was in the conversation with Building Committee was, we were looking at the cost factor in relation to taking out windows on buildings that were going to be renovated down the line. And so that's why you see something a little different on this in relation to, some windows are being completely replaced, some we're looking at glaze. That was taken into mind as well.
Thank you.
Please move forward. The next campus is Powell Elementary School, and it is the same as Helotes. It has some very old buildings, I think ranging from 50 to almost 60 years old.
Do you have something to say?
Building A, B, D, H, and J are the buildings that we're going to address for window replacement in the same manner that we're doing at Helotes, and then restroom upgrades as well. Next slide, please. There is a master plan for this campus, and one of the first items is they're going to renovate the cafeteria and new gym. And next slide, please. And eventually, they're going to get to where they're replacing the buildings, but the next phase will be replacing Building D. So we're going to recommend something slightly different for D than we did for the other buildings on this campus. Next slide, please. So the areas highlighted in yellow are the windows that we are going to replace 1 for 1, as well. The green are the restrooms, or the areas that we're going to renovate for accessibility. And the blue, we have some accessible route from the bus loop to the main part of the campus, and also from the parent drop-off pickup area that we're going to have to address. In Building D, what we're recommending is to bring into compliance what we can in those restrooms without moving walls and losing fixture count. So we're going to, like a 1 for 1 kind of replacement. So if we take something out, we'll make it compliant. Also in D, since that's going to be one of the first items touched, we're recommending we just replace the glass with a better efficient glass versus the whole window frame in glass as we're doing in the other buildings. Next slide, please. An enlargement. Currently, we're going to take over a classroom and gang all the restrooms because there used to be restrooms in each one of those areas. So we're going to put them together. It does get us a staff restroom in Building H and then some grade level storage. In Building A, we're renovating the teachers' restrooms as well as the clinic restroom and then the restroom in the ALE. And then we're replacing the windows, again, one for one in that building as well. Next slide, please. Just kind of give you an idea what the campus looks like. And it'll pretty much look the same. That's my presentation. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
All right, thank you. Ms. Reed, did you want to add anything
Well,
else?
just make sure everybody understands that if we wanted to take these windows out, put brick around them, and make the smaller windows that we've done on some campuses, that's very much more expensive. And if we're going to plan, with the long-range plan, it's to redo these buildings completely. So we can put just the window panes and the frames in to solve the problems that we have right now so far as leakage or whether they would fall apart.
Yes, ma'am. That's a pretty good
So hopefully everybody understood that.
Great, thank you. Okay. Ms. Freeman?
There's just one other question. I know we've talked about the master plan at Powell. Where down the road would we see a master plan for Helotes Elementary? Do you have any projections?
It's been discussed. I can't give you a timeline, but that'll be the next round of master planning will definitely include that campus.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Right, thank you very much. This is before the board for approval. Is there a motion coming before the board?
I would move approval of the plan as presented.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the schematic design, window upgrades, and ADA work at Helotes and Powell Elementary. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, the ayes have it, the motion carries. Thank you very much.
The next
Mr. Lamers, how are you?
The next item on the agenda is the auditorium replacement project, but this is exterior interior colors. Traditionally, we have colors as part of the consent agenda. However, as we presented this information to the building committee, they suggested that at least in two particular areas, two aspects of the building, that they like to share with the entire board the options that we have available, and then help us guide us to the process and hopefully give us a direction into which aspect or option we have. So Mr. Lammers has been gracious. I can tell you that Mr. Lammers did, I don't know how many options for us, probably way too many. So we cut them down, we gave them to the building committee, and the committee brought them down, and now we got two. So we started out about 15 of them, now we're down to 2. So, Mr. Lammers?
Bobby, we normally don't do this to you, but at the building committee, it was just Katie and I. And so we thought, y'all would like to take a look at it before just the two of us made our decision on what we. He hates colors so much. You are such a sweet man, Mr. Blunt.
Mr. Blunt, I apologize.
We actually forced it on him, Bobby. So, Jerry, if you would walk us through this,
Thank
please.
you. Good evening, Board President Chumney, trustees, Dr. Woods. As was said, we went to the building committee and we had a couple options to show them. So let's first talk about the exterior, just to remind everybody on the exterior, we're matching the colors that are already there. And I think you all have already seen the actual material boards that indicate that. But the brick, the paint colors, the glazed brick, the cast stone, everything will be a match of building I that's adjacent to it. And then the next thing that we are going to bring before you is the lobby floor colors. We have two options to show. The area in red, and with the red ring, is the lobby, which is what we're going to talk about next. So scheme 1 is this, and the floor color is what we're going to talk about today. Is we have a pattern that has all of these colors are there on the campus right now. The pattern in this scheme on the diagram on the right shows green and gold designs that are in front of each of the doors. That's the pattern in scheme 1. The walls, the ceiling, and the paint colors are all the same in either the scheme. And just to walk you through that, along the base there'll be that glazed green brick that's in the entry of the I building, the main lobby. Above that will be a cast stone cap. And then along the wall that's, as you walk in the door, is a tackable surface. So all along that wall, they'll be able to put up artwork. And then the wall on the right is all windows and doors. So in both schemes, the walls, the ceiling, and the columns and everything are the same. The only thing we're going to show you is an alternative floor pattern. So this is scheme 1, and this is scheme 2. Scheme 2 is more like what's in the cafeteria, which is basically the same pattern. It's just exploded, if you will. And we still have the bays that line up along the ceiling. It's just that in each pattern along the radius of the lobby area, instead of being unique in each door opening, now it kind of takes up 2 door openings. Now the feedback we got from this is this seemed a little more like appropriate for an art facility. So then we'll compare them both to each other, and these are them side by side. Scheme 1 on the left, scheme 2 on the right.
So one's kind of old school, one is kind of a new kind of design from what we're used to. And it is old school, but I really
no,
like
that's
it.
true. And one is more typical of what's on the whole entire campus, if you will. And all, the new buildings that have been recently, the J building, it has that same pattern. It's smaller as it goes down the corridor. And the one on the right is just taking the same colors and as I said earlier, just explodes the pattern.
So it's more pattern than it is color, Bobby.
Okay, I'm good.
And Mrs. Reed, do you have anything as committee chair?
Probably not. I actually like the first one better, so that's all I can say.
Dr. Harrell.
So just real quick, when you were talking about scheme 1 and scheme 2, I was already in the back looking at scheme 2 and scheme 1 on those panels that are on the side.
We're coming back to that.
Oh, are we coming back
That's
to
a
that?
separate.
That's the
That's
next
the second.
item.
That's the second.
Yeah, we
That's
have
the-
the-
that's-
I was like sold on scheme
We're
2.
pausing.
No, that's the second.
We're pausing here in the hope of rapid guidance.
We
on
have
the
to.
decision.
Okay, so,
I like the word exploding, though. I think the kids would like that, but anyway, that's my 2
okay,
cents.
so somebody needs to put a motion on the floor for the one that they want, and let's make a decision and move forward. Dr. Hall.
Oh, I'm sorry, Bobby was first. I was.
I'm not so sure.
Mr. Blunt.
To show that I'm a team player, I don't really like scheme 1, so I'm going to move for scheme 1 to be.
Okay, you like scheme 1 or you don't like?
No, I do.
scheme
I like scheme 1 much better than scheme 2.
one? Okay, so scheme 1 is the more traditional. More traditional. Okay, is there a second? It's been moved and seconded that we approve scheme 1 for the interior floor selection in the new auditorium at Holmes High School. All those in favor, please raise your hand.
We lost.
All those opposed? Okay, so that did not pass.
That's fine.
Can I have another motion in front of this board, please?
We don't need it, I don't think.
Ms. Freeman.
I guess I move that we approve scheme 2.
Is there a second? It's been moved and seconded. We approve scheme 2. All those in favor, please signify by raising their hand.
Okay.
Motion carries
All right.
unanimously. All right.
As we said earlier, we will agree.
Well, I think we liked them, and so either one.
They liked them both. Y'all liked them both.
I actually am old school, Bobby, but
Oh,
I'm
yeah?
trying to expand my vision.
All right, so now we're going to
I'm
move
trying to explode my vision.
into the auditorium, and it's the same scenario. We're looking at in the auditorium, and if you go to the first slide, I'll explain what's different. So essentially, in both schemes, the seating is exactly the same. The wood finish is the same. It's a mahogany finish. The brick around the perimeter is the same brick that's used in the lobby. So the only thing that we're having a discussion point is the acoustic panels on the sidewalls. So in scheme 1, we have a more traditional design that has these acoustic panels. They're essentially wood panels that are stained to mahogany, striped down the middle, and then above them are wood panels that are painted. And interspersed in there are acoustic panels that are the same color. They just absorb the sound, and they're flat versus having a profile. So in this scheme, it's green walls with a stained wood stripe down the middle, and then when you look down towards the stage, you can see how it frames the stage thus. So in the second scheme, everything's the same, except in this area here, we have an alternative color, which is playing off the brick color. It's kind of a terracotta color. And then we have a pixelated pattern, if you will, that introduces a yellow color. We still have the same green and stained wood color, but in this one, we've introduced a yellow color. So we have a different paint color here in this area. Everywhere else, it's green behind. And then we have that pixelated color. So that's the difference between the two. And then the next slide, please. And that's the two compared to each other. So it's the same scenario.
Ms. Reed, did you have any comments in relation to the building committee?
Yes, well, the building committee didn't agree probably because we actually had 4 different choices, I believe, and we did cut this down to 2. My personal opinion is that the first scheme leads you to the stage, whereas scheme 2 just kind of, ugh, you're looking at that instead of the stage. And so I just felt that scheme 1 was the more appropriate one.
Thank you.
And I would move approval for that.
It's been moved and seconded for scheme 1. Ms. Freeman?
So I've got a concern about functionality of the acoustical tiles. We talk about scheme 1. Now, please say that again. Those are wood panels.
It's a mixture of a wood, they're pyramid shaped, or they have a profile, and they've been designed by the acoustic consultant, the actual shape. And then along with those, there's a percentage of them that are actually absorb sound too. So the panels themselves have been engineered. All we're doing is changing the colors.
So the functionality in both
is exactly the same
styles, because it just doesn't look like it would be.
The only thing different is the paint colors.
So you've got the same number?
Yeah, the same number of panels, the same ratio of absorptive to reflective. It's just a paint.
I think what's misleading, Karen, is the green.
Yes.
Those are panels too. But
yes.
It looks like the panels are only those ones in the middle, but the green ones are actually panels too.
Yeah, these are all panels here, up above and below, and so they're just painted green, and these are stained the mahogany color, whereas they're painted multiple colors, and up and down. And then if you look carefully on your drawing in front of you, you can see ones that are flat and green. Those are the absorptive ones.
But the mahogany stain, though, when you say mahogany, because the panels are fabric.
No,
I mean, they're not?
Yeah, some of them are fabric, the ones that absorb sound.
Right.
Just like at Harlan, if you remember when you go there, those panels on the sidewalls, they're wood panels and they're stained. And there's also within them some acoustic panels that absorb. So what the engineers do is they figure out what percentage of absorptive you need and what percentage of reflective you need and how that reflection is supposed to occur. And then we put that in our on the walls, essentially. That's how that works.
Okay, Ms. Reed, Katie, did you have something else?
No, I thought Mr. Lopez did. Did you
Mr.
know?
Lopez? Yeah, okay, he's next.
Yeah, no.
Gerald?
I am I am favoring scheme 1. I do like the wood look on it. It kind of carries the elegant look on what a fine arts or what a auditorium should look like. I mean, it does throw me off. I agree with you on the colors on scheme 2. So I am more inclined to, or I am in favor of scheme 1. So just to let anybody know.
All right, well, we have a motion on the floor to approve scheme 1. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. All those opposed? The ayes have it, motion carries. So we're going to go with scheme 1.
All right.
That worked. That was
Thank
quick.
you.
Because as you can tell, the building committee of 2, we were split. Yes. And so that's why Bobby had ended up in front of the board. So.
like to thank Jerry, because he seems to bring all the controversy to the full board. You remember in Bernal, we had to bring it to the full board because at the opening it comes in.
Well,
So,
Jerry,
yeah, thank you, Jerry.
But Jerry, I do want to say thank you very much, because having been on this board for a number of years and having dealt with multiple architects, whenever we ask you to change a color, to give us another scheme, to give us another option, you never say anything about the aesthetics of the of what's been recommended. You come back and you give us different options, and you give us a lot of them, and you do it with a smile on your face, and it's just very pleasant to be able to work with you as an architect. So, thank you. Thank you. All right, moving along. Mr. Rastellini, the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report.
Thank you, Ms. Chumley. Presented this evening is the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report for the year ended August 31, 2017, commonly referred to as the CAFR. The report is presented under separate cover attached to your agenda, and is also the same as the report that was placed at your dais this evening. The report are representations concerning the financial condition and operations of the district. The accounting firm of RSM performed an audit of the report and have issued an unmodified opinion, which is the highest level of assurance the financial statements are free of material misstatement. Representative from the firm is available this evening if the trustees do have any questions. The audit has been discussed in detail at the January 10th and the January 23rd Finance Committee meeting, and at this time, the administration would recommend approval of the CAFR as presented.
Thank you. Mr. Lopez, thank you. Do you have any, as the Finance Committee Chair?
Yeah, Madam President. As David said, he did present this on in the January 10th and January 23rd Finance Committee meeting. A lot of the highlights that were brought up were important, but I just wanted to kind of make sure I touch on what David said, was that, the auditors issued an unmodified opinion on the financial statement. So, that's a very good thing. That indicates that the district is in the sound financial position. So, with that said, I would move for approval for the 2016-2017 annual financial report as presented.
Is there a second? Second. It's been moved and seconded that we approve the annual
financial.
I'm sorry, my thing went down. Pardon me, just one moment.
Right here.
The Comprehensive Annual Financial Report. Thank you very much. Seeing no discussion, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, the ayes have it, motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Chumley.
All right, the next item of business on the agenda is it's going to be the bond, I apologize. No, it's Mr. Galindo, the first reading and adoption of legal policies.
Yes, ma'am. Ms. Chumley, Dr. Woods, members of the board, I guess I should preface, this is Board Appreciation Month, and I apologize to bring a 900-page update. We did have some very healthy discussion in our policy committee, and really we've given you twice now, I believe, in your Friday letter, some summaries, both legal and local. And legal policies being what they are and not having to be approved, I'd like to just really highlight one policy that was brought up that wasn't actually written in your summary, and that's C&C. That policy, although you don't have it written or in your review, deals with transportation, and it did trigger some conversation in our committee. And really, the information there, and I will say there is no C&C local to go with it, but this being law, does call for seat belts on buses moving forward on any purchases that are made. And it does include some language there that if as a board you choose not to purchase them with seat belts, however, if you for budgetary constraints feel that you can't do that, that needs to be discussed and be voted on in an open meeting. And so that's the main piece to that. There's also some language there in regard to electronic communication. And really doesn't apply in that all of our bus drivers, if ever they need to communicate on their phones, are required to pull over, stop, and have that conversation. And so, again, that being one that originally wasn't on your summary, I wanted to bring that to your attention.
All right. Ms. Freeman, as the policy committee chair, is there anything you'd like to share?
Well, yes, actually.
Though I know that was a
I just want to
very
share
long.
with my fellow board members. I feel like this is show and tell, but in case y'all thought that the legislature was just dealing with the bathroom bill for the last legislative session, this is our update 109.
Wow.
And so Mr. Galindo was kind enough to give me this copy before we realized that there was an online piece and markups. But I just wanted you to see this because it's just unbelievable to me. And Mr. Galindo, I will, no, yes.
And now you got a bag to
Check
put
it,
it
you
in.
could check it out after
Now you got
this
your
and
bag
give it
to
back
put
to
it in
Mr.
here.
Galindo, yes.
That's actually your copy. You're free to hold on to that. Ms. Freeman.
I will share with my fellow board members. Thank you, Mr. Galindo.
Ms. Chumley, if possible, obviously the discussion being more of the local policies, again, with those not having to be approved, would like to move to those. But
Okay.
have you adopt the legals, of course.
All right, yes. Ms. Reed.
Before we leave the legal policies, I know we don't have any choice in what we do with them, but there is a requirement there. If you got an updated summary where there will now be a 3-hour training session on student academic performance, and includes a new reporting requirement for board member training. So there are some issues in here that will affect board members as well, and some things with food service as well. So I'm sure that we will be
Yes, ma'am.
told as we go along what it is that we need to be sure to do, because there obviously are a lot of pieces in this. Yeah, that's all.
Okay. Ms. Freeman?
Yes, Ms. Chumley, as Ms. Reed just brought up, there is a legal policy regarding what was in Senate Bill 1566 regarding school board training. Soon TASB will be talking about what training they will be offering. That will be initiated first at SLI, and our board will have the opportunity to either take the training individually, or, as I understand it, we anticipate the State Board of Ed approving such that if the whole board took the training that satisfies the Senate Bill 1566, we could also qualify for the 3 hours of team building training that we have annually too. So that's something for us to think about and talk about as perhaps SLI gets closer. I've just been made aware today that our ESCs are also initiating training for what's in the Senate Bill 1566 as well.
Thank you. Ray, I just had a couple of questions. I like
Sure.
this summary piece of it. There's one about a board may delegate to a designee the authority to take certain termination actions without board action when a contract employee is engaged in serious criminal conduct.
Correct.
So we're changing that?
No, that's actually, there's a local policy when we get to those that will adopt that due to some changes in legislation is being recommended by TASB.
But it says that we may do that, but we don't have to do that. So I guess that's one of these ones that you and I had talked about,
Correct.
where we may delegate that, but we have never delegated that when it comes to the termination of an employee. So is the local policy with this saying that we will delegate that responsibility?
There is, yes, the local does state that if you choose as a board to adopt that, there is that flexibility in the legal. And that, again, is one of the ones that I was going to discuss as a local policy. Then we had it in our policy committee as well that we discussed.
But y'all wrote it up that way for us to say that we would do that.
That's what TASB recommended, again, based on.
But again, we don't have to do what
Correct.
TASB recommends, right? Because we've never delegated the termination of an employee to the administration.
The reason, and I guess I'll jump to it, even though it was one of the locals again that we discussed, was to expedite if there was any type of situation that an employee, for example, that dealt in criminal misconduct, in order to expedite and not keep them on admin leave, it would be something that you would now delegate to Dr. Woods or probably Patty Hill in order to be more efficient.
And who
Whereas in
has-
the past, there hasn't been that. There had to be board action.
And who has the list of what is considered serious criminal conduct?
It's actually in the local, and it's very narrowly defined.
Okay, then I'll wait till we get
Yeah,
there.
it's,
Okay.
it's very narrowly
I'll wait
defined.
till we get there. And then, the grace, so are we now, so is this going to come to the board for the food services? That the board has to establish the length of the grace period,
Yes.
which a student can charge meals?
That's another legal that affects our local.
That's-
We already have, we already have that in practice. And so, and I'll speak to that one as well.
Right, but I don't believe the board has set that. So the
Correct.
change in this is that the board is supposed to set this.
Correct, there is-
Whereas before, the local policy was set by food services.
Actually, at this point, my understanding is we had it more as an admin reg. The law now would like, what's in statute now requires that you as a board, instead of the administration, decide what that grace period is, which in essence is not going to change.
Okay, unless the board decides that
Yes,
they
you
want
can
to
change,
change that.
absolutely.
And
And I'll
then-
explain that when we get to that one.
Okay, and then the last one was the polling places. So are we going to need to add additional security that we may not have now?
No, what that requires, and again, a local policy, is that we have for years in this district had, both at the district and campus level, emergency operation plans. And so now any building in our district that is a polling place, be it a school or a facility, has to have some security measure plan in place. And so already we've begun that process through our safety and security officer, where there's a checklist that the principals primarily at schools are the ones that mainly are the polling places that are using. And really it addresses, Ms. Chumley, everything from voter traffic flow when they get there, parking, if there's construction, and then if necessary, as you alluded to, put extra police if it's necessary, and that's after a discussion with the building, either the building manager if it's a director or the campus principal.
Okay, all right, thank you. So you need approval on this? Or you're asking for approval on the legal
Legal, yes,
policies?
ma'am, and then
So
we'll
is
move
there
to-
a motion come before the board? Ms. Freeman?
Ms. Chumley, I would move that we approve the legal policies in TASB Update 109.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the legal policies in TASB Localized Update with number 109. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? The ayes have it, the motion carries. All right, next item of business is the first reading of local policies in relation to Update 109.
And already we've touched on a few. So in your blue folder, in order to kind of make it a smooth discussion and review, is a hard copy of the local policies that you've already seen. Figured if you had that way you don't have to toggle back and forth between what you're seeing on your screen, but you have the locals in order there as presented. So the first one that we have, and again, if you follow along on your paper copy and you can look at the actual policy on the screen, is BBE, that deals with board authority. And this one really, as a result of Senate Bill 1566, now requires us to have and it's a very short 2-page policy, some language as it relates to, on page 1, you can see request for records by a trustee. Something that we've already, we would work with and have had no issues if there's any information ever that you're needed, that's requested and is needed. But at any rate, it just states that we will respond as per whatever the timeline is in law, which is typically 10 days.
And then you added the next one?
Yes, the second piece is on the bottom of page 2, and that deals with visits to district facilities. And the language there, again, required now by Senate Bill 1566, is that we have in this policy language that relates to when board members go out to visit any type of our facility, schools, or any other building or facility, that we follow or you follow any type of visitor requirements, as well as be sure to not interfere in any type of instruction or district operations, which has never been an issue, nor does it change anything of what we're doing practice-wise.
Do any trustees have any questions on this first policy?
No.
Okay, I do. We already have board operating procedures that talks about what we'll do when we visit schools. And so explain to me again, Ray, I'm sorry. If it is a legal policy, if TASB has written a legal policy that they've interpreted from the legislation that has passed in the last session, do we are obligated by law to have that policy in our local policies?
We are required by law we are required to follow the law. So whatever our local policy has to mirror and support the law.
But we don't have a local policy written for every legal policy, do we?
Correct, no.
Then I don't understand why we would have to do this.
The
Why we
reason,
would have to have this, because we already in our board operating procedures talk about the behavior of this board in relation to when we visit campuses. So if we're not required by law to have this in our policy, then I don't know why we would have to do that.
that's typical, but there are actually some pieces of law, some legislation that requires you to have it in your local policy. And this one, as it was explained to me as a result of Senate 1566, does require us to have that in our local, if that makes any sense. In other words,
Then I'd like to have it, I'd like to see what we have in board operating procedures and have the wording be what it is now, as what we have in board operating procedures. Because we already talk about what we'll do. I just don't see the need to have the redundancy of it, and I don't want one set Karen and local, and then we have something else in our board operating procedures. Ms. Freeman?
Yes, our board operating procedures, though, are not policy and truly can be changed by the board differently than our policy. I mean, we think we're talking about two different things. My thought would be that we need to perhaps look at and I don't know that it's contradictory, our board operating procedures to ensure that they conform with the legal and local. I don't see anything different about this language here that we have, that the language before us is different from anything that we're used to.
So and this is the wording that was given out of the legal?
it's actually out of statute.
So that is exactly the wording out of statute that we have.
correct. That is being recommended to be put in our local, which is what you're looking at there.
I take offense at the wording
Right.
that's in there. I really don't care for it. But so what you're telling me is that the law has indicated that this exact wording has to be in our policy.
Correct, that's my understanding. And typically in my conversation with them, Ms. Chumley, certainly not with our board or in this district, but as they write these, generally speaking, there could be issues somewhere else, and that's why they're written as such. And sometimes the issue from their perspective is so broad that they recommend, as they have in this case, for that language to be standard across all districts.
Well, remember that we were at that fast growth, and it's the first time that I had heard the term governance by anecdote, or right? This is governance on a legislative level by anecdote, because I doubt that they had numerous complaints from school districts. It's one school district or one person that went to a legislator and said, this trustee keeps going to schools. Anyway,
And there are probably others that way as well, unfortunately, Ms. Chumley.
We deal with legislation by anecdote every single session, and that is a very common, not unusual.
The reason I find it offensive is because it assumes that trustees act in an inappropriate way, and I don't care for that. So I'm sorry. Let's move on.
Okay. So the next one, completely different topic. CDA deals with finance and investments. Comes a result of HB 1701, And really, and I'm not going to read these word for word as you have your policy, your reviews in front of you, or your summaries, but the three main points here is any organization, business organization that's working with our district needs to provide the proper documentation and show that they're properly registered, that they're insured, and that they're in good standing. And that piece is on page 6 of 7 of our policy. If you scroll along, you can see that. And of course, something that we've been practicing in our district for quite some time, and again, not a real change in how we've been doing business. And that comes from discussion from Mr. Rastellini. The next one is CKC.
Dr. Hall?
No, I was just going to add on both of those, just to reinforce your point. And I don't know if it's anecdote or not. I have experienced both of these, and both we did talk about, because it does happen. And it's a shame that it has to be in policy, but Melissa, I disagree that it's by anecdote. I think there is reason to be concerned. There's conservators, there's all kinds of training in place because it goes on. We just haven't experienced that. So, you know, even on CDA, I said, haven't we been doing this? Don't we, isn't this? Yes, we have been. But I guarantee you, I mean, Texas is so large. There's so many school boards, but there's so much misinformation and misbehavior, I guess, that it results in these policies.
We're just all painted with the same brush, though, Carol, and I get tired of it.
Well,
So,
it's local and legal, so, I mean, that is the brush, kind of like, you know, why there's different courts, they have to interpret the law because it does. So, anyway, and we did question these in committee.
Point well taken. The next one, Ms. Chumley, you had mentioned or alluded to earlier, CKC deals with emergency plans. And so it's a very short, as you can see, one page, 1 or 2 lines now, as far as having now in our plans, both at the district and campus level, some sort of security measure plan when it comes to our facilities being used as polling places. And so you could see that the first part was just one sentence, and so now you see there, as required by law, that we will have that as part of our plans, and something we're already working on for the first election that we'll have soon upcoming.
Carol, did you press again?
I don't think so.
Okay, no, that's fine.
Maybe I've been double pressing like it's a computer. Sorry.
Now it's on, but you're good. I got you. No, you're good.
I really meant it.
So the next policy is CNA, dealing with student transportation. And this comes as a result of Senate Bill 195 and some TA changes as well. For years in our district, we've had what we call hazardous routes or conditions that it's less than 2 miles, but we provide transportation for children. Primarily in our district for years and years, it's been areas that are growing and subdivisions that go up, and there isn't adequate sidewalks, and so we provide transportation even though it's less than 2 miles. The law has now changed to include hazardous, to include what they consider high risk of violence areas. So it could be less than 2 miles, but if there's an area that police reports or information is such that it can be considered a high risk of violence, then those children can be transferred or transported on a bus. Fortunately, we don't have or anticipate any areas like that we would have to consider or document as high risk of violence and transport, but that now is in the law. Now, the other piece that changes this local policy is that for years, we've had, as I mentioned, these hazardous routes due to construction mainly. Well, now, as part of a resolution, we're being asked to bring those to you every year, and so that you can know what they are, those areas, and formally adopt them in a resolution as areas that are considered hazardous.
Do any trustees have any questions? Mr. Galindo, I just have one.
Okay.
On the page, it says hazardous conditions, which I believe is what we have now. And then in the rewrite on the policy, it says hazardous traffic conditions.
Right. Well, that's probably just they've added.
So which one is it going to be? Because hazardous conditions is not the same
It's
as
hazardous
hazardous
traffic.
traffic conditions.
It's hazardous traffic, but the main change is that not only is it hazardous traffic, it is now if you have an area.
Well, the violence.
Violence, yes.
Right.
So
Because before we had hazardous conditions.
Right.
Because so then that school where we've had near accidents, where we have a Shanefield,
Right.
is it Shanefield?
It's Ward and Jefferson, yes.
Then hazardous traffic conditions.
Right, and so it would be traffic
fall
as-
within
as,
that.
as it's written in blue.
Okay, all right, thank you.
We go from transportation to food services now. So CO local is the next one to bring to your attention. And this one also is the one we touched on already, that for years now, we've had our practices in place to where a student doesn't go without a meal. And so if there's no money and they need to charge at elementary for years, we have 5 charges that they can actually put on their record. Meantime, we're actually communicating with the parents, making sure that we somehow, some way can take care of the situation. At high school, that's 1 charge and the same thing, an administrator typically gets involved. And so although for years we've had this as a 5 and 1, if you will, 5 and for elementary, 1 for secondary charges, and then the courtesy meal that follows, all through admin type of regulations, now it is required that as a board, you actually have and establish the length of the grace period. And so that language there reflects that, that you are now aware and that you're the ones that are actually establishing that. And to your point earlier, if you wanted to change it, you can change that as a board. There's also language there which from committee we got into as much as possible, not in any way having those students that are on free and reduced lunch to be identified as such, and so we will have that communication. Fortunately, don't have a lot of issues on our campuses regarding that, but there's language to address that as well. Okay.
Okay.
Next one is DF. DF deals with the termination of an employee or termination of employment. This is the one that you mentioned right from the beginning. You'll see there, it's a very short, it is a new policy, and again, because there's change in the law, this is being put in place to expedite those types of situations where rather than have to wait to get board approval and discussion, that you can designate the superintendent or a designee to go ahead and move to termination. And you see there outlined specifically when that would occur, to your question earlier. So anything that's obviously SPEC, or it's going to be obviously a very serious offense that's created.
Becomes aware that a contract employee has been convicted of or has received deferred adjudication for a felony offense. Deferred adjudication, let's pull this to vote on it separately. I don't know how the rest of the board feels, but I don't want to turn that responsibility over to the superintendent when the termination of an employee has always been in the purview of the board.
Okay, we can.
Couple of comments, if I might. The one is this is the first reading, so we're not asking for action on these policies tonight. I think one thing to consider here is that in each of these situations, you would purely be talking about timing, because in either of these situations, I think it very likely the board would vote to terminate, and I think you're really talking about a timing issue. In the case of the first item here, we wouldn't have the option to keep that person employed.
No, and I have no problem with the first one. I do have the second, though. I've got concerns on the second. Mm-hmm. Yep. So, it's first reading, so
Okay.
we'll,
I can see where you would have problems. I can see that.
well, if the court
Right.
has allowed deferred adjudication, and there are some felony offenses that are less offensive than other felony offenses, I don't want to take the board out of that decision-making on it. So, Ms. Freeman.
I was going to mention that we aren't voting on this tonight, and perhaps this is an item that we need to review together with the legal policy.
That's a good idea.
If we decide to change anything that's written here. And perhaps discuss, make sure that our local policy does not, is not antagonistic to legal if we adopt or not adopt.
Okay. Mr. Blunt?
Yeah, I was just trying to think, on, I guess the other one on number 2, and it may not matter, but on deferred education, it's just, I was thinking about the time frame. So if it was like, well, I'll exaggerate just for illustration, if it was like 30 years ago they got deferred adjudication, would this also come into play? Or just sort of be at your discretion, correct?
As it's written, I think that could be a concern because it's, when you found out about it. Yeah, I can see that concern.
Okay.
And we've talked about before on other things, Bobby, that we have, things that a person does when they're 18 and now they're 38. I just,
It's almost like a double jeopardy, they're getting hit again twice.
yeah, I just want us to come back and talk about it. And this is first reading, so we've got time to do that. Thank you.
All right, the next policy is DH local, dealing with employee standards of conduct. And again, if you're following along, you'll see that there's a pretty lengthy review and summary of the changes there, beginning on page 1, where the terminology's changed from an illegal knife to a location-restricted knife. There's also a change there in terms of anyone who has a concealed handgun license, and them now being able to have an unloaded weapon in their vehicle, illegal. You also have the rest of that deals with electronic communication. Pretty standard in what we've already done, in that everything is encouraging that we follow the Educator Code of Ethics. You'll see there on pages 2 and 3, electronic communication, and everything from this, or I should say, not encouraging the use of any type of personal phone with students. And that if you, any type of communication you have with students, primarily, this is teacher related, of course, is open to public records. All of which, of course, we've addressed for years in our handbook and our own manuals. It goes on very specifically to describe and have language there in terms of notification if there's any suspicion of relationship with students. That goes on through page 3. And then finally, a change also, notice of drug-free workplace, that now has to be in a separate exhibit, or was in a separate exhibit, now included in this policy as part of the whole employee standard of conduct category. So again, quite a bit there that I summarized for you in your notes, but all of which in practice we are already and have been following for quite some time.
Just real quick, guys, I'm sorry, just because we had situations where a student's been hunting and they forget to take their deer rifle out of their truck, and they go to school and they get in trouble, severe trouble, for having their deer rifle in their truck. But this is saying if they have a handgun permit, that we're going to allow a teacher to have their handgun in their locked car.
Correct.
And
Out of view, unloaded, that is in law. That was,
where do the bullets have to be?
I didn't
In the
ask.
car, but it just has to be unloaded. Wow.
And that again, that comes and is in statute now. I asked the same question.
So if I forget to take my deer rifle out of my car and I'm an employee, though, then I'm in trouble. But if I have a permit for my gun,
Correct.
I'm not in trouble.
Correct. Both of these, and again, we discussed this
interesting.
in policy committee, Ms. Chumley. You have, as we've all heard, gun activists, and so we also have knife activists that have influenced this part of legislation. So, at any rate, next policy is EHBAF local. This deals with special ed cameras, or the installation at the request of primarily parents, although it can also be administrators and educators as well. So what you have here sets the rules for parent requests for cameras, the deadline to respond to them, the timelines for installation, operation of cameras, all the details in terms of the retention of the video, and there's audio as well. The rules as they apply to the confidentiality of recordings, and even provisions on how to refer and appeal to the commissioner if there's anything in question. Although we hadn't adopted a local policy, we were well within the law for the past 2 years. We've consulted with our attorneys. We actually last year had installation of cameras that continues through this year. And you may remember there's 2 requests. First is a request of the camera itself, and then if you ever think there's an incident that the video needs to be reviewed, there's a whole process to go through for that as well. All of that is said in this local policy. We held back from adopting, knowing that there would be some changes, and so that indeed occurred. And so what you have in front of you now, and you can see, are the amended changes from what they had originally come up with. I guess what is 18 months ago, I guess was when it first came out. We, again, in policy discussed, have had a number of these installed, and thus far have had no incidents where parents have requested a review of video. So we certainly feel that we have very effectively and successfully, I guess you could say, have implemented this piece of law.
Ms. Chong?
Yes, I'm sorry, Ms. Freeman.
That's okay. Before we leave this, thank you for bringing that up regarding our compliance. As we talked about that over time after this law was passed, in policy, I guess in policy and perhaps in another committee, we've talked about implementation. And I think there's been at least one time or more than one time where there was an opinion sought from the Attorney General as to how to interpret this policy. So it's been a struggle for us to, not the policy, but the law itself. So it's been a struggle, I assume, for TASB to put something together in local and for us to look at it as such. Is that right?
Correct. And you can see, again, some language there of some changes that were made. For example, the amount of time or the length of time that initially was for the information to be stored, it was 6 months that you had to have video. That's been changed to 3 months. Initially, camera installation was to be done in 45 days. Now the language says it's just within a reasonable time. What we found out, and I'm sure not just our district but others, but that there's a number of variables that when you actually try to implement, or as it was first written, we ran into some difficulty. And so what you have in front of you is now a much more reasonable policy that can be implemented. And again, one that we've already, as far as going back to the original way it was written, have been in compliance with.
Mr. Lopez?
Yeah, thank you. I just kind of wanted to piggyback off of what Karen was talking about in regarding to following this policy when it first was, or this law that was first brought up to us. You know, I do have to say, you know, we did do our best in trying to accommodate the law and make sure that the special ed cameras were installed. You know, there were so many ambiguities, there were so many things going on that we were struggling with that. So, you know, I think in what we're seeing here really kind of tightens things up, and so I just kind of wanted to make sure you know, that we're really working with this law. So just wanted to make sure I shared that comment and how we were really trying to bring it in and implement it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do any other trustees have any questions? I just have one. Okay, so I'm a little confused. So if a parent, so I request it because my child is going to be in that room, then, and it goes in for the remainder of the year, or does it only stay for the period of time that my child is in that room?
The latter. Now, we are supposed to ask, because the child may not be there in that classroom next year.
Right, so if my child graduates from 8th grade and moves on to high school, does that stay in that room the next year when my child's gone and I'm the requester of it?
We can get from you written permission to remove it since the child's not going to be there. Otherwise, it will remain in the classroom.
So we have no, so once a camera is put in a room, then we have no recourse if the parent and child are no longer there we have to keep the camera in that room?
In many cases, yes, it remains there. It's very costly.
That doesn't make sense to me.
Correct.
Particularly if parents, and then what do we do if we have a parent that doesn't want that does not want a camera in that room?
We go through a process where parents are notified prior to the actual flipping the switch on, so to speak. We've not had any situations where a parent has disagreed, but we have to go through a whole process to let them know.
So if I want it, then it applies to all students within that classroom.
Correct.
Then and forever, if I don't give you the authority to remove it, even when my children have graduated from this school district.
Correct. Well, as it was first written, yes. But since the modifications have been made, there is that flexibility. But the camera will remain there. I mean, you have to go through the whole, in some cases, wiring and installation. So the camera remains there. You can actually not have it be active once that student graduates or moves on. We've experienced that.
But if my child graduates, you still need to have my approval to remove it or turn it off?
No.
No. So it's only as long as the child is within the school system,
Correct.
even though they're not at the same school. It's only as long as they're in the school system.
So as long as they're assigned to that physical space. I think we're talking about two different things. One is kind of the practical issue of physically removing a camera and pulling all the cabling out and all that.
Oh, no, yeah, I'm not talking, I'm
You're
just talking about
is it
turning it
active?
off, right, is it active or
Once-
not?
If you're requested a camera for your particular child in a particular space, once your child, either because they moved on to the next grade level or they moved to the next school or they graduated, that camera could be turned off until and unless a different parent whose child was in that same physical space requested a camera. And then we would go through our process, and if it qualified, it would be turned back on.
And do any teachers does a teacher have the right to say, I don't want to work in a room that has me videoed throughout the whole day?
That's not addressed in the law, and it hasn't come up for us. That
I'm
would
just
get
curious.
complicated. It would depend on certification issues and all kinds of things. That's probably something that would fall to us to have to figure out. That's not addressed in the statute.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Next one is FEA, and it's a very familiar one for you. We actually are ahead of the game here. This is the local policy that addresses any student that's just like a student going to college and gets excused absences to go visit campuses. If they're going to enlist in the U.S. Armed Services or Texas National Guard, they are excused up to 4 days to pursue military enlistment. So that one you should be very familiar with, and involves some of our students actually.
Sure does.
The next one's FFAA, deals with wellness and health services. There's a little bit of just cleanup language in the first part there that deals with physicals, which doesn't really affect our practice. The bottom is what is new, and there's language there that addresses students in elementary school in regard to lice. And so basically, again, as an elementary person or administrator, we've been doing this for years, which basically you need to notify the parent of the child that's been identified that has them within 48 hours, and then go about in a very sensitive way and communicate with the rest of the children and their parents, all of which within 5 days, which we usually do the same day.
Yeah.
But that, again, Ms. Chumley, now is something that is in policy that they're recommending.
Okay.
Next one's FFF, dealing with student safety, FFF. It's a new policy. And this deals with notifying parents of any type of educator misconduct. And you can see there outlines that if ever there is, after an investigation confirmed engaging in some sort of misconduct, then as you can see there, outline 1, 2, and 3, then the communication must occur as soon as possible. And you can see the rest there as far as, even without the aspect being notified and the rest of the information they have there. Again, just to expedite and ensure that communication occurs with the parent. Next one's FFI. This one, again, in your notes, you have a pretty lengthy summary. Here again, we've already addressed this actually in the fall through our own practices and student handbooks. Goes on to explain that bullying now it can be electronic, actually is defined. That's on page 1. There's language there about reporting procedures. That's on page 2. Parent notification, and even notifying and involving law enforcement if necessary. All of which, again, we've discussed before and have in practice already in our district, and the local policy will now reflect that. Moving right along, the next one is a one-sentence policy from 1986, FNCH, which is being recommended for deletion, and we have no issue with that. So we've have all sorts of admin regs that deal with that. Then we have GBAA. This deals with the Public Information Act. Comes as a result of HB 3107, and now has the language there as far as charging for any type of personnel time needed with public information requests, which we get very often. And although we had not had it written in local policy, we were following the law, and there has been some flexibility in the law that if there's ever a big request for information, we typically will provide them an estimate of how much it is before we proceed in getting that information. And so this basically just codifies what we've been doing in practice in regard to PIAs.
We're almost there.
GKA deals with conduct in school premises, and again, you'll see there basically gives a little more authority in terms of administrators and having to eject a person from a school, or in case of another facility, a director, and having them removed. I won't read everything that you have there, but you can see, of course, with us having a police department, that has been very helpful. Moving right along, GKC deals with school visitors, and you'll see there language relating back to board members that was now, or that language in BBE now addresses board member visitors. That's on page 1, and that's under notice. And then you have quite a bit there, and again, all that we've already for many years have had in practice, and that is our procedures when dealing with sex offenders, specifically for parents who might be registered sex offenders who do actually, of course, have rights, and that's all outlined in there for them as far as them being able to go to the school, attend parent meetings, and that type of thing. And then finally, GKE, local is the last one, deals with community relations. And again, as a result of one of our bills, 1566, we're now required, this is one of those where we're required to adopt a policy that allows the principal to provide an opportunity for these patriotic society representatives to come and speak to our students. Who are they, you might ask? This is, again, we've been doing it for years, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, Big Brothers, Big Sisters, those types of organizations. And so now required to have that in a policy, and that's GKE. And that, Ms. Chumley, is update 109. It is first reading, and obviously a to-do list for me to come back on a couple of them at least.
Okay, this is our local, which means we have some control over that, right?
Right, which
Did, so right now, when a principal has a patriotic organization, our representative come, is anyone else notified that that's going to happen?
besides the principal, or?
When the principal makes a decision of who the person is that's coming,
that's their decision. And basically, this is a rewrite of what we've already had for years in practice, which is principal discretion as far as any types of visitors like that. And Boy Scouts of America is one that we work with for years.
Okay. All right. First reading, okay. That was just the 109.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes.
So,
Sorry.
since this is a first reading, is the board all right with this? Ms. Freeman, if you could tell us if there was any discussion that came up in relation to FDA local, FDB local in the policy committee. And is the board, Ray, if there's something that you think the board should, you feel the board would want to look at within this? Otherwise, since it's first reading, if we just get Karen's address from the policy committee, are we all right to move on?
Yes, ma'am. These were actually, they deal with child of employee transfers. They were brought up at another policy committee, but they've been discussed.
Ms. Freeman?
I'm sorry, we're talking about policy.
It's the first reading of policy FDA local and FDB local.
So in our discussion, there hasn't been anything that we haven't, that I remember, and I'll ask my policy, the policy committee people that were there, we didn't bring up anything that has not been discussed here this evening. That is my opinion. Carol, I know you were there.
I was there too, and I don't think there was really anything,
It's been 2 or 3 weeks, but I don't recall anything different, Ms. Chumley.
Okay, and just so we'll make sure that, so the policy that is FDA local is where we are now opening up attendance to our schools for district employees who live outside of the school district. Right, and I
Right.
think that we have had discussion in relation to that, and
In committee.
in committee. Is the board comfortable with us moving on then, on that?
Yeah.
And then, Mr. Lopez?
I think to kind of, now that I'm remembering the conversation, I think one of the questions that we had asked was, what school would that child, wherever let's say if the parent was here at central office, well, what school would that child go to? Elementary school. And I think it was, well, the nearest campus that's within the radius of the central office. So, I mean, other than that, there really wasn't anything difficult. I think we recognized it was just within the parameters of where that staff was working, and designating a campus for that child to go to.
Okay.
Yes, Ms. Chumley, I think perhaps I misunderstood the question. Regarding that particular policy, we thought that it would be advantageous to give our staff that opportunity to make that choice, and it would have what we're looking at as minimal impact on our district if we granted them that opportunity.
Okay. Ms. Reed?
Yeah, we got, I think, in Friday letter or something.
We did.
All the numbers and so forth. I wasn't real sure I understood what all the numbers were, but there's also a list there of things that would apply. And I, as you know, transportation would not be provided, and there's a lot of things like that. UIL rules will apply for the secondary students. Does that mean that they are not eligible the first year they come to one of the schools?
No, ma'am, not necessarily. If I began high school as a 9th grader, then I would be eligible, even though it is on a transfer.
Okay. So if they came in as a junior in high school, they
Then
would not be eligible?
That's correct, yes, ma'am.
Okay. I just
First
couldn't
time.
remember exactly what the UIL was.
There are some UIL rules that would grant exception to that, but they would be fairly uncommon.
Yeah, and then I guess the last one on that list was that extenuating circumstances such as a displaced teacher, in other words, a teacher's moved to another location, will be handled administratively if necessary.
Right.
So that gives you the flexibility to do what needs to be done.
Yes, ma'am, and that's been the case now with folks who have lived in the district and had a child at the school where they were actually working. We've tried to work with that employee to do what's best for the family.
All right.
So, you know, we talked about it quite a bit, I think, at the meeting, so, yeah.
Yeah.
I would move approval.
Well,
Oh,
we're
second
actually,
reading.
because we're on first reading. Okay, so let's move on though to class waivers, and then we get to the meat of our meeting.
If I could just say one thing with regard to policies before we move on.
Yes, sir.
Our intent would be to bring back FDA and FDB at the February called meeting. There are some timelines with regard to notification of employees, getting information back from employees should they choose to select this option. And so we want to try to stay on a reasonable timeline. So, and then the update 109 locals would come back at the February regular meeting.
That sounds good.
Just as a preview of coming attractions.
Mr. Glendo, any class waivers?
Yes, ma'am, we do have a request for approval of 7 class waivers. We have one more month. Next month should be the last, and then, of course, the 22-1 does not apply. So the ask is for approval for 7.
So that means we're still having kids coming into the district that is causing this?
No, that means well, in some cases. But we're also, again, as has been mentioned before, as much as possible when those families come in, keeping them at their home campus.
Right.
Which helps out also with transportation, which means we don't have to transport them.
Right.
One thing to remember about waivers is that as soon as a classroom gets above 22, we are mandated by statute to bring that waiver request to the board. If a class goes back down to 22 or lower, the waiver still applies, right? So this is just a situation where it happened someplace else. But with mobility in our district, that's not unusual.
So, is there a motion come before the board?
I would move approval of the waivers as requested.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the maximum class size waivers as presented. Seeing no discussion, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, the ayes have it, motion carries. Next item of business is the 2018 bond program. Dr. Woods.
Yes, ma'am. Ms. Chumley and members of the board, as you know, we started many months ago investigating a possible bond for 2018. Mr. San Miguel's staff has put together originally a very large project list and prioritized that project list. We then, as you know, put together a citizens bond group that spent several weeks looking at a list of potential projects. That list was eventually narrowed down to a citizens bond recommendation, which came to this board actually a couple of weeks ago. Following conversation with the board 2 weeks ago, we made some fairly small changes to the Citizens Bond Committee recommendation. To be a little more specific, I really felt like we could take some of the projects that had originally been identified in our list of projects and move them into local funding, fairly small projects that I thought we could move into local funding and accomplish over roughly the same period of time as what a bond 2018 would cover. That allowed us to add a couple of projects that came to us through the committee work, some things that the committee was interested in seeing included in a bond 2018, and the net effect of pulling some of those things out and putting them in the general fund and adding those projects was roughly equal dollars to do those things. So tonight, what the members of the board see before you is the summary of our conversation from 2 weeks ago. As you know, there are 8 categories of projects included in this, from obviously new schools, and again, I know you know this, but we will need an additional high school, significant dollars spent on renovation and reconstruction, which has been a goal of this staff and this board for so many years to try to have an opportunity to focus on our older schools. This proposal, as it sits in front of you this evening, puts roughly 2/3 of the dollars into our existing schools and about 1/3 of dollars into construction of new schools. There are also, as is typical with bonds in Northside, some dollars dedicated to transportation, some dollars dedicated to technology infrastructure, and then, as you all know, bond issuance and management, because that is something that we do in-house and take pride in having our own staff lead those projects. So staff is here, and I will obviously answer any questions the board might be interested in undertaking. Also included, I'll mention in your agenda, is just a snapshot again of what you saw a couple of weeks ago with regard to potential tax implications. Certainly staff are here to answer questions, but given the amount of conversation that's happened at the board level and certainly in our community, at this time we would recommend the board consider approval of the list of projects for Bond 2018.
Thank you, Dr. Woods. So as Brian has indicated, we have, the bond committee has reviewed this. Their recommendation has come to us. The board had a very detailed review of this at our called meeting. And so the recommendation before us is that we support the calling of an $848,910,000 bond. Do any trustees have any questions? Dr. Harrell?
Just a couple. Dr. Woods, remind us how many citizens, how many volunteers showed up multiple nights to study the data and the reports and work in committees and come up with the recommendations.
I'm going to look at Barry and say 300 and ask him to correct me.
I was thinking 250.
Initially
Is-
sent out slightly over 400 invitations. Each of the night, we had anywhere between 250 to 300 members.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
And these were all from various parts of our district who volunteered their time to work in committees.
Correct. Parents, citizens,
That's incredible.
staff members, and
Businessmen?
Yeah, that's a lot to celebrate. The other question, and I think, Ms. Chumley, you and I, it was a question I asked you, but it'll be forthcoming, where the categories of bond or expenditure recommendations would be facilities, existing facilities, new facilities by campus. So there would be a way to share, like all elementary schools are receiving shaded playgrounds. All high schools are getting refurbished football fields, that kind of thing. So everyone throughout Northside can see the impact this bond would have at their child's school. And you said that that would be part of the bond presentation. Having not lived through that, that'll be a good thing to have.
Part of, should
Right,
the
then,
board call the
should the
call
bond-
an
should-
election,
Should board
that
call?
would be one of the
That-
staff's next steps.
Okay. And then if there was a question about why something wasn't included, that would be of a facilities nature. And I think, Leroy, this was answered last time. I would ask them as a board member to contact that department to say, the reason why we can't put like those covered quarters at O'Connor's, it would be some sort of legal code issue with proximity to the street or something. So those were my three major questions, other than, again, extremely grateful that we had that many people providing input, along with staff. Thank you very much.
Any other trustees? I think the only thing that I would add on it is that I think that the board historically has tried very hard to make sure that we maintain our older facilities, and that we try really hard, I think, to have equity in our district in relation to when we're building new schools and when we're coming back. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe 67% of this bond is looking at renovation and maintenance and upgrades to our older facilities. And I just, I think that's something that we need to be proud of as a board, that we continue to strive to make sure that we address everyone throughout our school district. Ms. Freeman?
Yes, I know we talked briefly about it the last time. When we have bond proposals and we do presentations at each school actually, when Dr. Woods or whomever goes to a school, there's a list of items that will impact specifically that school. And when we do that, though, I just ask that perhaps we look at flexibility, even with, if there's a school that already has shade structures, obviously we're not going to put additional ones on top of that. Let's just look at, when we look at the individual campuses, see what's specific to that individual school. With technology, if they've already got iPads, and we've said that iPads are going to go to X number of elementary schools, and they already have iPads at capacity because of other funds that they've gotten, whether it be grants or something else, that we actually look at that and give that school perhaps that flexibility for those decisions. I'm not sure how that would look with how we itemize the bond, but as long as we're conscious about when we do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lopez?
Yeah, I just kind of wanted to reiterate or just kind of make sure, piggyback off of what you had said, Madam President, but, in recognizing the committee, the Citizens Bond Committee, I mean, having been a part of that this year as a first time for me as a board member, I was really impressed with the committee and their understanding of the projects, because on this bond, and we're looking at as far as the infrastructure, the buildings, the necessary things that we need to do, like you said, take care of our older campuses. I see that, and that's what a lot of what the committee members were talking about. They understand that we're growing, and they know that we need to maintain our growth, and we need to continue to build for the growth, but they also realize, more importantly, that maintaining our old facilities was important too. So, and that's what I really liked about the bond. It was all around, and there were some people in my group that were from different campuses on different sides of the district, and they could relate and say, yeah, you're having that problem, so am I. And even though it was on a different side of the district, there were some relatable issues that they could understand, and then so they supported each other on that. So it was really good to see that dynamic happening as an observer. So that's why I really do, I really see this bond as something being important. I know it is important. It is, evidently, but this is not a fluff bond. This is something that we need as a district. I don't mean to characterize it that way, but this is a necessity. Right, this is a necessity. And in order for us to grow and in order for us to continue to provide the service that we do, it's important. So.
Thank you. Ms. Reed?
Just wanted to talk a little bit about the process. The fact that we have moved to the point where we have actual board members working on some of the subcommittees when we put the first committee together, or I'm not sure how much participation you had. I think maybe you were more listeners than participants. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Which is the process that we use. And just the fact that I can remember way back when I first came on, we were not allowed to do that. We did not know what was going on, and nobody told us until the committee came and brought us the recommendation. One of the other things I've seen over the years is other school districts have come up with an amount, but they don't have the specifications of what it's going to be used for. And then they change their mind along the way. That's not anything that's ever happened here in Northside, and I think what we have in place right now is a really great process that makes us all very comfortable and should make our community comfortable, knowing that this is what we're going to do, and this is how much we anticipate it cost. It might be less, probably not more, because our numbers are always on the conservative side. And this is what will happen and when it will happen, and you know how much money is involved and whether your taxes are going to go up a little bit or not. One of the good things that's happened over the years is because of the growth, continued growth in the district, that helps pay for some of the expenses of the bond so that your taxes don't go up. Ours have not gone up in the last 4 bond issues, is that correct? Last 4 bond issues, Brian? We have not gone up into, I think.
We're 7 years in a row without an increase.
Yeah.
So the last 7 fiscal years, we have not had an
Okay.
increase.
So anyway, we've been very responsible, I think, to our taxpayers and done a good job of providing the facilities for our students, and that's what it's all about, is it's about the kids first. And so that's what we're trying to do and make sure that it is. I had one little question about this list that we have here when it talks about the field synthetic replacements. It says 4 sites and then it says 10 sites, but technically it's only 9, isn't it? Because we already have a new synthetic turf at J.
It's 10. There are 10 other sites.
But J's listed on there. So if we're going to use this information, we need to clarify that one.
Yes, correct.
One place.
We'll make that correction. Thank you.
Okay. So anyway, I just think it's a well-put-together bond. We know it's a little larger than most of our bonds, but then everything costs more as we move forward.
Mr. Blunt?
Yeah, definitely in agreement, definitely in support of the full amount in the Board of Trustees column that our President, Trustee Chumley, just put forth before us. There is one other thing that historically, I'm hesitating a little bit, this board has done with our bond packages, and we'll have to consider whether or not we want to do that again, because we have to word it carefully. What we have done in the past, this board has sort of certified that, how do you state it? Those items put forth in the bond, we certify as a Board of Trustees that we will accomplish those. And that just goes back to way back when one of the bonds didn't pass in the past, and that was the reason why there were some concerns over what was put in there versus what was also given. So I don't know how, because this one's very detailed, I don't know if we want to continue that or say we're going to achieve that stated purpose. The reason why I hesitate is like Trustee Freeman's comment, I don't want somebody to misread something. It says, well, you said all 79, but you only did 77. In the end, that's up to the administration to figure out, but, we'd have to be careful in that regard. So maybe we say we accomplished the purpose or something like that, but I think we should consider doing that again.
Good point. All right, is there a motion to come before the board? Dr. Harrell? That's later. Katie?
I move that we, as a board, approve the 2018 bond program as outlined in the summary.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the 2018 bond program as outlined in our summary, which is $848,918,000. Mr. Blunt?
10. Correct that amount, please. It was 848,910.
910.
910.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just wasn't sure, I can do an amendment, or if we actually want to do the certification now or afterwards. That's a part of that motion. And we as a Board of Trustees certify that we're going to accomplish the items put forth in this bond.
I'm trying to remember, how have we done this?
We actually had a document before.
That's what I'm thinking.
Okay, that's fine.
That's what I'm thinking too, that we have done that.
I actually remembered it the other way, but I don't think it matters.
Well, then, trying to think. Dr. Hall?
Do you want me to restate?
Are you open to restating your motion in relation to the board certifies that we will accomplish the goals as presented within the 2018 bond program? or something similar to that. Mr. Blunt, does that meet?
Is that? Okay, so walk me through this. So I move that we approve.
I move that. Yes.
Yes, and the amount again is, I want to be exact,
848.
848,
910.
910 thousand dollars, right? Gosh, I've never said a number that big.
I think it's okay.
And
That we certify.
that we certify that our board will accomplish the bond projects as outlined in the program summary. Okay.
All right, who was the second?
Second.
All right. Who was the original second? Okay, and so you second the
Second.
the change. All right.
That was Gerald.
That was Gerald. All right, is there any further discussion? Ms. Freeman?
Just another comment to add to the certification. We've, since, I guess, 1992, we've had a citizens bond advisory committee that it was a group of citizens, and still is a group of citizens, that oversees the bond projects, and to actually certify that the district is doing what we said we were going to do when the bond passed. So they will hold, or should hold, our feet to the fire as well. That's
a
just
great
another
point.
So is that
Another
part
group.
of the certification that we just approved? Or
No,
is that
it's
separate?
always been part of our bond process, our bond program, is that members of the bond committee then become members of the bond advisory committee, and then they'll meet throughout the course of our bond with being updates of where we are, what the progress is, any challenges that arise. That's a really good point, Karen, because I'm not sure all districts do that, but I do think that's something that we continue to keep the
I like that.
transparency.
Just another comment.
I like it a lot.
All right, any other discussion? All right, seeing none, all those in,
Ms. Chumley, just
Yes.
for clarification, Ms. Reed's point of J, that's actually Harlan, not J. Because we have 11 comprehensive schools.
Okay.
John Jay already has the term, so it's Harlan instead of J.
Okay.
okay, so you'll just
So
correct
same
that.
Would you substitute?
Just the name.
We'll make the correction.
Okay. All right, seeing no further discussion, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? The ayes have it, and the motion carries.
Woo.
Very good.
Given
Moving forward,
that, we've got a couple of other items that the board needs
Right.
to consider.
the next item of business is a consideration and approval of an order calling a bond election to be held by NISD, making provisions for the conduct of the election and resolving other matters incident and related to such election. And Mr. Astellini, do you want just the top part of this to be in the motion?
Actually, you can make the motion based on my presentation, because I'm going to read the proposition.
All right, that'll be fine. Mr. Astellini.
Thank you, Ms. Chumley. Attached is the order to call an election on May 5th, 2018, to authorize the issuance of general obligation bonds for capital improvements as discussed. The order calls for one proposition for $848,910,000 that will read as follows. This may take a while. Shall the Board of Trustees of the Northside Independent School District be authorized to issue and sell bonds of the district in the principal amount of not to exceed $848,910,000 for the purposes of designing, constructing, renovating, acquiring, and equipping school facilities in the district, to wit, one high school, one middle school, and 2 elementary schools, additional classrooms and renovations at school campuses, additions, renovations, and improvement to libraries, science labs, special education and fine arts facilities, various system infrastructure repairs, replacements, improvements, and equipment upgrades, including roof repair or replacement, waterproofing, air conditioning, heating, lighting, plumbing, electric, flooring, technology, paving, drainage, parking, safety and security, and other structural and mechanical systems, additions, expansions, renovations, and improvements to athletic facilities and other additions, renovations, and improvement to instructional and non-instructional district facilities, auditoriums, kitchens, and cafeterias at school campuses, and the purpose of new school buses and the levying of tax and payment thereof. That proposition will be for or against. The district recommends the order of election as read.
Thank you. Is there a motion to come before the board?
I would move approval of the recommendation that.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the recommendation that has been presented in relation to the calling of the bond. All those in favor, please signify. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? The ayes have it, and motion carries. Next item of business is consideration and approval of resolution by the Board of Trustees of NISD concerning joint election procedures relating to the May 5th, 2018 bond election. Mr. Rastellini.
Thank you, Ms. Chumley. Attached to this agenda is a copy of the joint election agreement with the Bexar County Elections Administrator and the Northside Independent School District to hold and conduct a joint election on May 5th, 2018. Also attached is the board resolution that allows the superintendent or designee to enter into and execute the joint election agreement. Recommendation is to approve as presented.
Thank you. Is there a motion to come before the board?
I move to approve.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the resolution as read by Mr. Rastellini. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? The ayes have it, and motion carries. Congratulations. Now we have a lot of work ahead of us.
Now goes the next step. That's right.
The next item of business is on the agenda is future agenda items. Dr. Woods?
Yes, ma'am. In your blue folder, there are a number of items, including obviously future agenda items. We do have a called meeting, as was mentioned earlier, in the month of February in addition to the regular meeting. There's the TASB advocacy agenda as updated in October of 2017. A number of invitations, including one to for next week to Founders Day, as you heard about earlier this evening, the Adult and Community Education Annual Report, and a dedication booklet from Harlan High School. So a number of items in your folder tonight.
Is everyone going to be here on February 27th?
I think not.
I will not be.
Okay, so we're going to need to reschedule our board photo.
We'll work on that.
All right, so that'll come off. I just have a couple of things. I just want to remind everyone the 45th Walter Gerlach Livestock Show is going on this week. And Hog Show, Hog is the best hog people. They show are the best ag people. Big people. Big people are the best ag people. Anyway, the Hog Show is Thursday, and the sale is Saturday, and it starts at 10:30. And so there's an open invitation to all of the trustees to join us at the sale. Anytime during the day, right. For pig people, yes. On Thursday, we start, our show starts at 8 on Thursday. We'll be finished probably about 2:30. Yeah, so before 2 or 2:30, and then the sale is on Saturday. So great. At 10:30 is opening ceremonies. And then the other item is to let the board know that we've had our first meeting in relation to our presentation at NSBA, and I will get minutes out to everyone in the outline that came up. And then the next meeting, we need to find a time. And what I would like to know, though, is I'd like to get a count. It doesn't have to be now. If you'll just let Linda know or email me of what trustees want to actually participate in the presentation versus be there in moral support and also to be introduced. So, introduce themselves. Yes, introduce themselves. Because we have an introduction piece of it where all trustees will introduce themselves. But, you know, and it's fine. All of us can participate. Some of us can. I mean, it's open, so just, if you would, please just let me know what your preference is on that. And then we'll be working with Linda to get another meeting scheduled to try to see if we can get everybody that's there, if it's convenient. So we'll come up with 2 or 3 different dates and send that to you.
Just FYI, the presentation itself is Sunday, the 8th of April at 8:30 a.m.
Oh, really?
Yes.
We may not have very many people there.
So thinking of Rand's design for the medal, that's right before Fiesta with the backpack. Wouldn't that be fun to have that on the presentation?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Came from our students.
I think so. All right, so we are ready to go into executive session. So the Board of Trustees, and does the board want to meet in, do you want to stay in the boardroom or do you want to meet in? Okay, and we do have the superintendent's mid-year evaluation as well. So preference is to stay here?
5-minute break at least.
Yes. Guys, since we're doing the mid-year evaluation, I think I'd just as soon be a
At
little
the
bit more
table?
comfortable and sit at the table. Are y'all all right with that? Okay, so the Board of Trustees on January 23rd, beginning at 10:20, will convene in closed meeting in accordance with Texas Government Code Sections 551.072 and 551.074. On January 23rd, beginning at 11:07, thank you. 11:07 PM, we'll convene an open meeting. Are there any motions come for the board?
I would move approval of the A and B appointments.
All right. It's been moved and seconded that we approve the appointments, the administrative appointments as discussed in closed session. Any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, the ayes have it, motion carries. I just, for the record, want to say that the board met for Dr. Woods' mid-year evaluation, and we concur that he is doing an outstanding job, that we're very fortunate to have you as our superintendent and a member of our team of 8, and that will be reflected for your record.
You're here.
Yep. Very good. And the Board of Trustees then adjourns at 11:08 on January 23rd.